There's something special about old cars, isn't there? Something that you can't quite put your finger on. Even though I can almost put my finger through this rust hole here, but there's something about old cars, the design of them, the history of them, the smell of them, the feel of them, and the fact that they've had so many stories before you've even possibly owned them, and I think that is what makes them so compelling to work on as a project car.
And a Gemini, it's pushing 50 years old. This one is one that we found in Japan, and it was broken. Didn't work very well, didn't know much about it, but through magic of the auction system over there, managed to score it really cheap, just a couple of $1,000s, which is unheard of these days. I've always wanted to do a Gemini coupe, whatever you want to call it, project. I've had a lot of them. My very first car was a Gemini, much like this one, and I wanted to do it right ever since. It's been a long time coming. I know a lot of you have been excited about this and waiting for it, and now is the time that we're going to get started and make this thing awesome.
Marty, why do you love them so much? What's special? Bring me, as the new person who doesn't know, how do I become a Gemini Weirdbeard? Why?
Okay, firstly, when I was getting my license, they were everywhere. It was a really good option. My first Gemini was $300. So when you're a teenager, you just got your license, you know how much cash, bang, Gemini was a good option. Your other option were all front-wheel drive, like early Corollas and early Astras and other stuff that wasn't that interesting. I like the fact that it's small, also rear-wheel drive. I like the fact that at the time, especially, again, not much money to spend on it, economical. They've also stood the test of time. People have turned these into race cars, drag cars, burnout cars. And there was just a lot of them. And I don't know, like, style, you love it or hate it. Does a 240Z look better? Yes, I guess it probably does. This is kind of a one class of car, smaller though.
But it's chunky.
It's kind of chunky.
And you know what? It feels sincere. You know, like minis feel kind of funny.
Yeah.
This feels like I got a job to do.
And I think they drive pretty nice for what they are, considering it's like, 70s or probably earlier suspension design and all that sort of stuff.
It's about to drive a whole lot nicer.
It's about to drive a whole lot nicer.
And a whole lot faster.
So to address the elephant in the room, yes, it's taken ages to get to the point where we can pull it out and seriously make some progress. Some keen-eyed viewers would notice that up the back, there's some engines there that look like engines. Well, you'll find out. But anyway, the parts are here. There's a box of parts in there. Our job, and we don't have very long to do this part of the job, is to strip it back to the point where it can be painted. So this used to be yellow.
The paint job is horrendous.
It's bad.
Like really I don't know if it was a home. I mean, look, we can't talk. We painted a Civic in the wind, under a tree, on a driveway.
Yeah.
This is not that much better.
No, it used to be yellow. Someone's painted it black. There's actually pictures that circulated of this car sitting in a dealer in Japan or a workshop before we even owned it. And it looked a bit better, but it didn't look that much better. So we are going to get it painted and do the best possible job that we can do with that. We're going to help get it stripped out and get it ready. Luckily, the inside is just perfect. You don't see that anymore with a Gemini. You will not find a Gemini with a nicer interior of this era than this one. And I'm just so happy with how that is. So we're going to carefully remove that, remove all the junk that we don't need, which is a lot of it, and then get it off to get painted.
For a car of this age, the inside is near perfect and original. The black vinyl has withstood the elements, even if there is some questionable stereo equipment floating around. The same can't be said for the outside, which has not only been colour changed from yellow to black, it's got rust, which is almost inevitable on a car of this age. The engine had to come out in Japan due to import restrictions, just like our 240Z, but it was in a pretty sad state anyway, so we'll need to replace it. The first job is to remove, well, everything.
We've come so far. It's all like exhaust gas recirculation stuff from the late 70s when the fuel crisis was a thing and people were trying to save money on fuel, but also clean up cars, smog rules, stuff like that. That is all going in the bin because whatever we put in will be much more modern and much more clean and efficient than this.
We're removing a heap of old parts like the ignition coil, aircon setup, relays, solenoids, and a mile of vacuum lines. Things have come a long way since the 70s, and most of this will be completely updated, modernised, or straight up deleted by the time we're finished with it.
Everything that's left in there has to be pulled back through wiring looms, aircon, heating, so everything else that we could find has been pulled apart. Now the only thing that's got to happen is the interior needs to be stripped, and then it can go off to paint.
While most of what's left in the engine bay is going into boxes, probably never to be seen again, the interior needs to be carefully disassembled and put aside so we can refit it after paint. Some small amounts of retrimming will be required, but overall it should look great as it is. Fortunately, you can buy replacement rubbers and plastic clips, so we'll be able to refresh all that stuff to make sure the interior works as it did when the car rolled out of the factory. Some of these metal trims on the doors end up being a one-time fit, so only some of them will go back on.
Lots of people have all these romantic ideas about an old car. Oh, I don't want a new car, I'm gonna get an old car. It'll be so awesome and it'll smell and feel and sound like it used to. That's what some people think of when they think of old cars. This is what I think of, because this was my first car. So, well, this model of car, not this exact one. So I think of jobs like this where, as you take off your metal trim that you'll probably never get back on again, literally the car is falling apart, turning to dust in front of you. Look, that's part of the door that used to be there. All the stuff falling out of it, that's car.
I'm getting flashbacks of working on the driveway with some very basic tools. It was a long time ago though, so I'm a little bit worried about getting it back together.
One of the first photos I have in my phone, I didn't take it on my phone, but it's a photo I've kept for whatever reason, is my first Gemini, and working on it when I was in year 11 or year 12 at high school, on the driveway, a driveway some of you might recognise, giving it a wash and fixing a heater box that was leaking. Here it is. So there you go. That's circa 1999, I think. Yes, I know some of you weren't born then. Old man Gemini. Found some cool stuff in here, people. The carpet's in good condition. The interior is in amazing condition, which I'm so happy about. It doesn't stink. It doesn't smell like durries at all. Not like cancer sticks, not like lung busters, not like darts, nothing. It's awesome. But what I have found, stereo gear. A Gex T50 FM AM hideaway tuner. So the tuner's here, and this is the control unit for it, which someone just looks like they've hacked in with a butter knife, but hey, it's there. And I've also got a Carrozzeria power amplifier Gem 600 35 watt plus 35 watt. I have actually used one of these before. Dug it out of some BN Commodore back in like 2001 and then sold it for like heaps of money on eBay. But there you go. That's some cool stereo stuff that's gonna come out and in the bin. The reason I'm doing all this is to get the carpet out. Because with the carpet out and the back trims out and the back seat out, we're good. I think I'm not gonna touch the headliner. It's so good, but I really, really don't want to have to pick it off. So a few discoveries. One is that for some reason all the carpet is held down with slaz, that real sticky black stuff that doesn't ever come off. Other interesting fact is rust. Not that bad. This is just typical being left in the rain and the window seals aren't that great, or the windscreen leaks a bit because the water's come in, run down and sat and pooled. And I mean, that is the job of these things, I guess, is that you can drain water out of the car. So both of them are a bit rusty, front and back.
That's the car stripped. Now it's time to head down and see Joey and Alec at VIP Smash and Mechanical to get started on the bodywork.
As expected, anywhere that rain and water gets is where the rust is. The worst of it is here. Not terrible because it's not in the actual rails, it's just this little panel up here. Funnily enough, there's no rust along the top, which is where I would have expected to see it. And the only other places, there's some surface on those areas, but that's not a big deal at all. A little bit in the bottom here where the water has come through and collected. And then again in the rear tyre well, spare tyre well. So anyone that's had a Gemini has probably dealt with that style of stuff before. You can still buy the replacement panels, which is just nuts. The roof is perfect, which is great, so no work required. A lot of the panels, like the bonnet and the doors, really good condition. So basically today we are going to strip it as much as we possibly can in the time that we've got. Just everyone's on board. Joey's on there, Alec's on there. We've got our mate Jackie here as well. And we're just gonna strip it. So let's do it.
Blowing your entire car apart to paint it is a huge undertaking, and plenty of project cars have stalled at this point because it requires a huge investment of time, money, well, often it's both. The boys have agreed to do me a good price and the use of their shop consumables and their help if I come to work on it myself as much as possible. So we'll be down here for a few weeks getting this thing stripped, prepped and painted. Anything that's rusty has to be stripped back and treated, and if it's too far gone, the surrounding metal has to be cut out and replaced completely. I did consider sandblasting or acid dipping the car at this stage, and it was definitely an option, but once we worked out that we're mainly dealing with a few small sections of rust, we decided to do it all in-house to save time and money. That meant the sound deadening had to come off, and any rusty panels that were spot welded to the chassis could be drilled out or ground off.
So our Gemini build hit boost thanks to Domino's, because a full car restoration takes ages and is expensive and there's no way around it. But thanks to their help, it's happening and we're having some tasty lunch. We bought this, by the way, no freebies, but maybe I should talk to them about that for next time. You just get 10 times as many.
There's a number of brackets that won't be required with the new engine setup, so we're going to take this opportunity to get rid of them. But I'm going to leave some of the original threaded holes to mount things to later on. Most of this stuff is spot welded in place, and with some careful use of a drill bit made for drilling these out, they come off with a little bit of encouragement from a hammer and chisel. Then it's a matter of smoothing out the surrounding metal so it can be primed and painted and look like they were never there. We've blown through a heap of wire wheels to get rid of rust, dirt, old paint, and anything else that's attached itself to this old car during the last few decades.
I'm feeling good. I'm exceptionally dusty and dirty. We've been making some great progress. The aim for today was to strip the car as much as we possibly can. So get any rust off it, just grind as much crap, any adhesive, get all the stuff on the floor out of it. And it's been going very, very, very well. We're probably gonna have to come back another day to continue on it. But it's going to be a long one because painting any car takes freaking ages, but I'm feeling very good about it.
Does it feel like it's been 4 visits to the paint shop yet? That's right, 4 full days, and we are not even in primer yet. Stripping a car right back takes a heap of effort, but with up to 5 of us on it at a time, we are making some great progress. We can't afford to leave any rust because it never sleeps, and it will eventually bubble back through our fresh paint job. So plenty of grinding, brushing, and rust converter is being used to fix it. We have identified some key areas that need major rust repairs. The battery tray has copped a few leaky batteries, and when you consider they usually last 3 to 5 years, this car would have had lots of them. The best way to repair this is to cut out the entire rusty panel and make a new one, weld it in, grind it back, and paint over it. The inner guards have some rusty spots, and the wheel arches do also. Aside from that, it's mostly surface rust that we've managed to catch just in time before it got too bad.
That's rusted because of the battery tray, right?
100%.
Every time.
Anytime, every time.
I feel like anywhere that there was either something leaking out
Yep.
or water leaking in is rusted.
It always is a case, or when, it's not always, but when it happens, a battery can expand and explode in itself.
Yeah.
And when it does, it slowly leaks out and ends up eating out the body.
And so all these seals, all these seams that are in here,
Yes.
that is, I'm assuming, where water would have sat and moisture would have sat.
Definitely.
But once we dig it out, it's actually not that bad. Like around here, I thought we'd have to probably replace this, but once
Yeah.
I ground back a bit of that's basically the dirt.
Yeah, and you
crap.
actually see what you're dealing with, and believe it or not, what looked like it was a big project ends
Yeah.
up slimming down itself
Yep.
on its own. It shouldn't take too much long. I give it about 2 weeks.
Yeah, cool.
So everyone can see and understand what's
Yeah.
happening and has an understanding of the deadline
Well,
that
that's
we're playing
exciting,
with.
man.
You
I can't
know?
wait. We might even see the colour today. We're going to spray it on
Yeah.
the sample card.
Don't say
we may
might.
or may not show you. But we're going to have a look at it and see what it looks like. So, all right, we're going to keep doing
No,
some panels.
all
We're going to
good.
keep attacking it. Thanks, Joey.
Thank
Doing
you
a good
too,
job, man.
buddy. I really appreciate it.
Let's go.
All right, it's back onto the tools, and we are going to go hard to get this thing done.
So the hanging panels like the guards and the bonnet and the boot are all basically ready to high fill and then block. So almost no damage on it, which is great. I think because this was painted in Japan, when they painted it black, they probably fixed a fair bit of stuff. We found a little bit of bog in it, but not that much. This just right now requires high fill, then it gets blocked, and that's what makes it glassy smooth, but these are coming together real fast. This, however, if it doesn't require repairs and doesn't have rust, that's the same for basically any car. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years old or 40 years old or 45 years old, like in our case, but our shell is the bit that's gonna take a lot of work, because where it's sat and where the rain got into it, that's where all the damage is. It just seems like it was a really nice car that sat outside for 5 or 10 years and the water got to it. So we fix all those areas, and then we can sort of high fill the whole thing, rub the whole thing back, put the color on. That's gonna look so good. I'm so excited to show you the color. Oh.
Choosing a colour is a big deal. I definitely don't want black, and yellow is even further down my list, but I've given it lots of thought and I think I've landed on the right choice.
This is the exciting bit that I've been waiting for. We're gonna mix up and spray out a color card to see what it looks like. Been agonizing over what color to paint the car. Some of you will have a clue of what color it's gonna be, but let's just see how it goes. Mix it up, we've got our formula, which we can't show you because it's our top secret formula. Gonna mix it up, spray it on a card, and maybe we'll show you, or maybe we won't.
This colour doesn't exist in the manuals and sample cards, so we've had to do some extra digging and matching to get it just right. By spraying out a sample card, we can make sure it would look as good as we hope before we order multiple litres of the stuff to cover the entire car. It also means we can put it under artificial light and sunlight and make sure that it flips and looks excellent.
There's some silver in there, some black, some grey, some white, some red, some blue. Could be anything. Let's stir it up and have a look, shall we? Oh, what? Oh, it looks so good. I would never have guessed it would come out like that. That looks freaking amazing. How does it look in black and white? Does it look good in black and white?
Keep watching and you will see the new colour soon enough. But for now, back to bodywork.
We've been coming down every single week to help wherever we can. Now, obviously these guys are professionals, so they have been doing a lot of extra time as well, out of hours, getting stuff restored and ready, straightening up panels, high fill, all the stuff that is legitimately just hard labour to get the car ready. Now, the last few weeks that we've been here, we've mostly been dealing with rust. We have gone through so many grinding discs and wire brushes, it's not even funny, just to get rid of all the dirt and dust. Some of the panels actually turned to dust in our hands as we were sort of stripping them off. We made a few panels here. I made a panel, Joey's made some panels on the English wheel to get all the curves right, doing the like classic panel beating, which doesn't happen as much these days as it used to. We've picked off the front valance and the front bar support here as well to get rid of all the rust that's underneath it. Luckily in this particular car, it is mostly just on the surface. There's a few bad patches here and there, but overall, we did pretty well. There is a point in a project like this where if you had enough rust, you would just chuck it and you go, no, not going there. I mean, I realize people pull things out of barns and swamps and do that, but there's enough Geminis out there you don't need to. But I'm happy to say this shell will survive. It's not that bad. We've repaired pretty much everything. So now it's at the stage where we've applied some etch primer to all the areas that we have restored that we did take back to bare metal, which as you can see is quite a lot of the engine bay. Most of the problems were in the bay and around the front of the car. The actual turret and the rest of the car is actually really, really good. It's straight. We've done no repairs on the roof so far and it's looking really, really good. It might need a little skim here and there. The rest of the car's turned out really good. The boot copped a little bit of water, like most Gemini boots do, because it leaks through here. So we've repaired all that. We've repaired the spare tyre wheel, the well where the spare tyre goes, and stripped off everything else. So now, today, we are gonna high fill the car. High fill is where we put on the primer to really be able to block it back and make it really smooth. So that's what we're up to. We're gonna pump straight into it. There's a lot to show you. Come with us. This is the not very glamorous job of stripping all the adhesive because the hood lining actually comes up under the seal here and then is glued on. So I'm just stripping off 40-year-old glue But we need to do that so we can tape it from the back and then paint it, so this will be all the new colour. But we're having a good time chatting to the boys. One thing I love about this shop is the vibe. They're just really positive. They all love cars. They've all got a ridiculous number of cars and projects because they have the sickness, as do I. So yeah, it's nice, enjoyable, and nice to see it taking shape. Cannot wait to see it with colour on it.
The steering rack is staying in so we can easily move the car around the shop. Harry from VIP is going to be in charge of laying down the paint, which should look great as long as our prep is up to scratch.
All right, Harry, you do a lot of masking. Whose marking's better, mine on the passenger side or Joey's on this side?
I'll be at the judge of that. Let me have a look.
I got you. I'm gonna.
You know what, Joe? I'm sorry, man.
Yes, winning. Sorry, mate.
Nah, it's all right.
Now we have a panel beating competition and I will lose.
Yeah,
That's fair.
fair and fair.
Oh yeah, I'm good at masking. There you go.
It's actually very neat.
Thank you. This time, people, the Gemini is going to make its way into the booth for the first time. Well, its second time, our first time, to get the first layer of primer and high fill on so then it can be blocked back.
It's a tale as old as time. The hard work of a paint job is in the prep. And we have spent weeks getting this thing straight, but we've still got hours of work to do because once this primer dries, we have to sand it all back using blocks, which helps smooth out any imperfections in the panels. We've masked up anything not requiring primer or any areas we want to paint separately. Then we pull a large sheet of plastic over the whole car, and using the masking tape we applied earlier, it all gets stuck down over the windows. Then we can cut around them using a razor blade. Next, we're cleaning off everything with Prepsol, wiping it down, and then it's ready to mix up the paint and start laying this primer.
I've lost count of how many days we've been here, but we've been back and forth as often as we possibly can to get this car moving along. It has been high-filled. We've also got the guide coat that's been sprayed over it, and now it's all about blocking. The body's been done, the rust repairs have been done, and over here we actually have the panels as well, which have been sprayed out. So we've got the panels here with all the primer and the high fill and the guide coat, and now everything is going to get blocked so it is perfectly smooth. This is where all the fine scratches come out. This is what the final top coat sits on, and the better and smoother this is, the better the final paint job will look. So even though this looks like some boring grey, this is what matters. We're going to rub it all back, and then we're going to do colour. Okay, so I'm going to pull off the rest of the interior trims as much as I can. I'm leaving the hood lining because it's absolutely perfect. And in a Gemini, you actually don't see the inside colour like you do in some old cars. So we could actually leave this yellow, but I think what I'm going to do, just to make it super neat and also efficient, is to just paint this all black, just a very basic satin black. That way anything that does poke through will just sort of disappear. You could do it body colour, but you don't actually see it. So I don't know if there's any point fully prepping and painting this in the same as the body colour. So this is going to come off, headlining will stay, everything else will get dusted black. We make sure there's no rust left, no dirt left, clean it all out, and that will be a nice base to put carpet, sound deadening, all the other stuff that goes back in afterwards. All right, that's a couple of hours of blocking. It's like nearly 40 degrees today, so I'm feeling it, but it's going to be totally worth it. Just spraying some Prepsol on this now, and from there, if you get the angle right, you get a bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. Kind of acts like a clear coat, and you can see if it's straight, and it actually looks really good. So all the damage has been repaired by the boys, obviously, and then that high fill, and then we've blocked it back with that flat surface, which makes that panel flat, which is what makes cars look excellent when they're painted.
Now that the inside of the car has been fully repaired and stripped of all the factory sound deadening, I can lay down some black which will seal it all up and provide a nice clean base for our more modern sound deadening carpet and interior trim. I'm on a mission to get rid of as much yellow as I possibly can, because even though you won't see it under the carpet, I'll still know it's there. Once that is dry, we can go all hands on deck to block back the engine bay and any remaining parts of the car that are in primer, ready for the big moment of laying down the new colour. And speaking of colour, I guess it's about time I showed you exactly what is going to get sprayed onto this bare shell.
Could be anything. Let's stir it up and have a look, shall we? Oh, what? Oh, it looks so good. I would never have guessed it would come out like that. It looks freaking amazing.
The name of this colour is Gemini Metallic. Picking a colour on a full respray is a big deal. Once it's on, and there's no going back easily. That is the colour you'll be turning around to look at when you park your car. It was originally developed by Porsche, and I found examples of it going way back to the 1970s, but it is a colour you can still order today. The colour jumped at me straight away, and when I saw the name, I knew it was the right choice. So we're going to spray out a sample card to make sure it looks good under artificial lights, shade and full sun. Then we can come back down and get to work painting the entire car.
It's another day down here at VIP Smash and Mechanical, and it's an exciting day because colour is going on. Look at this. It's all been blocked. We're masking it up, ready so that we can put plastic over it, and then we can spray this thing. I cannot tell you how excited I am to see the final colour on this thing, and it's happening today. Let's do it. We are just about to paint the Gemini after weeks and weeks and weeks of work. Lots of work by us, and the boys have put in even more hours after hours to get this thing right. It's ready to put the colour on. This is a bit I've been so excited about because this is where we get to see it transform into this amazing Porsche Gemini blue that I've chosen. I just need to go sit down. base coat is on, so you can see the colour, which I think has turned out just excellent. It's this really interesting combination of blue. It kind of flips a little bit purple, but not so much that it looks like a purple car. And it's got this really nice silver in there as well. So that is Porsche Gemini Blue. That's the colour. So now we're just going to make sure there's no imperfections in it. If we need to do more coats, we need to sand anything, make sure this stage is right, because once the clear is on, that's locked away forever. So the next stage is check all this, potentially spray it again, hit it with clear, hit it with more clear, hit it with more clear, and then the car will be painted. Then we've got to do all the panels and everything else. So there's still a bit to do, but we'll fast forward it through for you.
I knew this entire project was going to be a huge undertaking, and that's why it took so long to kick off in the first place. The paint and panel was something I wanted to hold off on until I could be sure that the work would be excellent. The guys at VIP pulled out all the stops and let us come down to help, and in the end there were hundreds of hours of work put in. The result is outstanding, and this will be a street car, not a show car locked away in a garage. It will be used and driven out on the road, and it will look absolutely excellent when it's all done. There is still weeks of work ahead of us, but I couldn't be happier with where we're up to right now.
So when I was trying to find parts to rebuild and refresh everything on this Gemini, I was looking around the internet. I came across a mob called Just Geminis from WA, run by a guy called Darren, and he does all these kits, so you get all the parts, the ball joints, the rubbers, the white line stuff, mad, steering coupling, all this kind of stuff as well in a kit, and it came with a note. I'm going to read it to you. To Marty Carmods, hi guys, great to hear from you, Marty. I'm a long time follower from the beginning of YouTube when you first started. I used to leave comments about buying a Gemini in every video. Thank you. I knew it was just a matter of time you go back to your roots. As I say, you never forget. You still have the Gemini in your blood. With all the part sponsors, I'm humbled that you chose my steering and suspension package for your little gem. It really means a lot to have you following my page, Just Geminis. Whether it's for parts or advice, I hope to hear from you again. Obviously, in your Perth, you have to drop by and borrow a Gemini. It sounds pretty good. Hope the build goes well for you and can't wait to see what you've planned. There's a little gift in there as well. Any dramas, give me a buzz. Cheers from Darren O'Neill at Just Geminis. What a legend. So I got him here. This is Darren from Just Geminis in Perth.
How we going?
Literally just said, hey man, do you want to just come and give me a hand? So how did you get in the whole Gemini thing?
Oh, first car was a Gemini from
Same.
my old man, yeah, so just got hooked on them since then.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now you kind of restore them as a bit of a hobby?
Yeah, I guess it's a hobby, but it's turned into a job as well. Yeah. So yeah, I just restore Geminis, fix them up.
So I saw a bunch of photos on your page, which is how I found you, of pretty much Geminis in the same condition as mine, like before and afters. And I was like, oh, you fix them up. And then I realised you did kits. And kits are really handy when you don't remember what everything does.
Yep. Well, it's just so much easier when you can get it all from one shop, you know. I just get them all different places and put it together for a kit for everyone.
So now that one of Australia's most chilled out Gemini experts is here to give me a hand, we can start the mammoth task of reassembling this freshly stripped and painted car. I've done this enough times to know this is like the hardest puzzle you've ever done, except harder than that and with no instruction manual and heaps of missing bits that have fallen down behind the lounge that you really should clean behind one day but you haven't. And speaking of cleaning, we're going to start on the suspension and subframe, rip all of it out and renew everything we can with a bunch of mad parts that Darren has put together for me. Luckily for us, there isn't too much rust on anything, so it's just going to be a clean, a repaint, and then a bunch of new bushes and bolts.
So these are the suspension arms. So in advance, Darren has basically got a set all done with the bushings pressed in. These are the ones that you do need to press to get them into. So upper and lower arms, those bushes, they're all new. They're actually JDM ones, and the ball joints as well are Japan ones. And Isuzu still makes some of this stuff. And if you put a big enough order in, they make it for a car that's nearly 50 years old. So always worth checking with that kind of thing. So we're going to throw these nicely refreshed arms in, pull my ones out, Darren will take them and refresh them, and we'll get into it. So we're going to do a bunch of front ends, pretty much replace everything that we can get our hands on, and see where we end up.
The front suspension on the Gemini has the spring and shock separate, so they both need to come out. The spring is pretty keen to exit the building, but once it's gone, we can pop the ball joints, remove the old arms, and prep the new ones. Meanwhile, Darren is going to refurbish the steering rack with all new bushes and rubbers. And while he's doing that, I'm going to pull out the front subframe and give it a birthday bath in black paint. This also gives me a chance to clean up any areas that we missed when we were painting the car. The steering often gets sloppy in old cars, and Darren has worked out why.
this is your tie rod. This is the inner of the tie rod. And if it's really bad, check this out.
That's how you know you need new inner tie rod ends.
If you got, and that can feel like a wobble in the steering wheel, which you can think is like your steering rack bushes, or it can feel like it's that disc that sits in between the input shaft, but actually it's that. And you can't see that without pulling this off.
It makes way more sense to change any wear items in the front end now while it's all apart. It's quicker and saves money and time in the long run. We're talking inner and outer tie rod ends, steering rack bushes, brakes, calipers, lines, the whole lot. Any brackets that show signs of corrosion are getting chucked into the sandblaster, then a fresh coat of etch primer and enamel paint, same as what they got at the factory. Everything is getting multiple coats, and while it dries, we're going to pull out the fuel lines and anything else that's in the way. Darren's made good progress on the lower arms, and the subframe is nearly dry too.
It's been a super productive day. Darren's been an awesome help as well. We have basically refinished everything in the front end, so anything that was a bit rusty or crusty has been redone. Backing plate, spindle, subframe, sway bar mounts. We're going to let that dry overnight and then hit it hard again tomorrow. Subframe is in, and that means we can start doing suspension again, hey?
Yep, we can chuck all the arms back in.
So
Springs in.
So far it's somewhat of a rattle can rebuild.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that.
It just gets it done. I mean, back in the factory, it would have just been all been coated with black paint, hey?
Yeah, they just used chassis black, like they assembled it first and then just chassis blacked over everything.
Including bushes?
Yep, straight over all the rubber bushes, yep. You can see it in the brochures, all the bushes are painted.
No way. And you reckon the welding's better on this or not?
Yeah, it looks better. It does look better on the Jap ones than the Aussie ones.
No way.
Yep.
So we've got a bunch of the Recoat arms that Darren brought over from WA with him in his suitcase, and he'll take my ones back and recycle them. But yeah, all new bushes through everything. So
yep.
this I'm looking forward to this. Let's
all
start.
All new genuine bushes. Yep. Isuzu.
Let's go.
Yep.
Hydraulic lines hanging out of it.
No.
I'm tripping out. I'm like, where do the lines go? It doesn't have any. It's just manual.
Yeah, manual steering rack. It's all easy.
How do they go with manual racks, do you reckon, in your experience?
They're fine, really, unless you get massive tyres with like sticky tyres, then you might really struggle a little bit, but most people will be all right.
And what about steering wheel size? Does that come into it?
Only if you're going to go a tiny little steering wheel, but yeah, nah,
I
should
am
be
guilty
fine.
of doing that about 25 years ago and it sucked. So this time when I change the steering wheel, it's going to be a decent size. Awesome, so we just bolt this in and then our front end's kind of coming together, eh?
Yep, that's right, yep.
Let's go.
The front suspension is just about complete. It will all need a proper wheel alignment before we drive it around, but now we can focus our attention on the back of the car. The spring seats are a little bit rusty, so they need to be ground out and treated before we can install any new ones. And as well as some lowered springs, I've got my hands on some other suspension upgrades for the rear also.
There once was a prospector called Rodney who worked very, very hard. And sometimes he'd go to work and his wife would say, "Pan hard, Rod," which is exactly what this is. Check it out. Adjustable pan hard rod, which is awesome. Apparently also fits Commodores because there's a lot of similarities between Gemini and Commodore for anyone playing at home. That's the stock one. The length is not adjustable, it's fixed. When you put lowering springs in and drop everything down, it can sort of mess up the location of the rear of your car. The mirror, the four-wheel drive JDM mirror that we did had the same thing. We needed an adjustable one, we had to make one. In this case, Whiteline has come to the rescue, and that is an adjustable aftermarket panhard rod, which we're going to put in along with our lowered springs. Then we're going to stick the wheels on, which I'm very excited to see. The suspension has been totally refreshed. We've got new springs in there, all new bearings and bushings and ball joints and everything that can be replaced. We have replaced. The only thing missing is brakes. But right now, the next exciting part is wheels.
This is my mate Mark from Bauer Brothers. The year is 2020, the 180SX has yet to be restored, and he is test fitting some black racing 14-inch wheels that he's found in Japan. These are going to be fully restored with new lips and new barrels.
And here they are, completely finished. They look absolutely excellent. When we did these wheels, I didn't actually know what colour the car was going to be. I had an idea that the car would be blue, but I wasn't sure. New lips, new barrels, just an absolute masterpiece by my good friend Mark. What an absolute legend. And now we're going to be able to test fit them. And we're going to see what the car's going to look like, check its height, its stance and all that good stuff right now. All right, here we go. Got Fast and the Furious style brakes for the moment. But that looks excellent. And these wheels have been custom made for this car. Measured them up, custom offset, all that sort of like special stuff that means it should just fit perfectly. So let's get all four on and then drop it.
The car rolls again, and now we can turn our attention back to some of the old parts that need to be refinished. Now that I've got a heap of them all stripped and primed and ready, I'll paint those and the bumpers in some satin black using a spray gun. This almost always gives a nicer finish than rattle cans, but it's way more messy.
Through the magic of editing, the bumper bars are now dry. I am so stoked with how these turned out. They look great, and they're done here in the shed with a paint gun and some good quality paint. So next we're going to move on to sound deadening. We're going to do the whole inside of the car to make it less drummy and sound better on the road.
We removed all the factory sound deadening so we could treat rust and repaint the inside of the car. I'm going to reapply some tar-based product to the entire floor and just about any other surface I can get to. This makes the sheet metal less drummy and prone to vibrations. It will cut down road noise, heat, and make the cabin a nicer place to be. The only penalty is weight, but for a street car, I reckon it's totally worth it. The final piece of this suspension puzzle has arrived, replacement shock absorbers, so now the originals can go in the bin. These are an easy install on a Gemini where the spring and shock are separate. Once these are in, I can replace some of the remaining bushes in the rear end and then turn my attention to the diff.
Okay, so things have been progressing really well so far. Just replacing bushes and springs and shocks and all that sort of fun stuff. But Gemini has this thing called a torque tube, which is where it looks like it's got a diff, but then it's got this tubey thing that's mounted up here, which is kind of unusual. Normally your diff would be mounted here and you'd have a tail shaft that went the whole way. It's just how they did it back in the day. They are known to be weak, but with some mods, you can make them better. This one happens to be the same as a diesel Gemini diff. So the Japanese ones came with a diff that is a little bit stronger than what we got in Australia. So it should be fine for the power I'm chasing, but we do need to replace some bushes in here, a bearing that's in here, and so the whole thing kind of has to come apart. And I'm out of my comfort zone now because I never had to do this on my old Geminis back in the day, and it's all very old and very hard to get to, so here goes nothing.
There's heaps of stories of these torque tubes exploding when you put more than stock power through them. It's an unknown for me, but I do know that by making sure all the bushes and mounts are up to the task of holding it in place, it might survive. If the housings twist and turn beyond what they're designed to do, there's no chance for what's inside them, and it's a guaranteed way to end up with scrap metal. Installing this solid torque tube mount should hold it nice and steady. The JDM Geminis use a slightly more robust design than the Aussie ones, but diesel Geminis, yes, that was a thing in the 80s, use this same diff and it's known to be pretty strong. I guess we'll find out soon enough.
Torque tube is looking excellent. Got the new carrier bushing bearing thing in there, plus the big one that sits here, which is now solid. If you don't do that, it axle tramps, it flops around. It's just not a nice day. So that can now go back into the Gemini.
After a huge couple of days, the suspension and rear diff are sorted. Now it's time to try and find an engine.
Absolutely huge progress. Thank you, Darren from Just Geminis, for coming to visit and giving me a hand knowing where all those little bolts and bits and pieces go, refreshing my memory.
And the thing is, with old cars, changing the suspension, upgrading the brakes, all that stuff that you don't necessarily see from the outside of the car, that is a game changer because it makes the car not only drive as good as the day it left the production line, even better because it's modern, upgraded, and has 0 Ks on it.
Yeah, Alan.
What's happening?
Hey, man, what you got?
Got the 2 options. Fix it.
Let me show you. I covered it so you can see how cool it is. Want to see? Look, look, look. I'm very much looking forward to showing Alan this. You love old cars.
I do.
It's your thing. Look.
Love a Gemini.
What do you reckon? And there's a lot of empty space, empty real estate in here. And I thought you might be the guy to help me fill it up.
There's a bolt missing.
Yeah, I know, I wrecked that one. I snapped a bolt in there so we can work that out later.
This is a test.
I left the fun ones for you.
So what's the vibe? What are we doing?
The vibe is, there's an engine that needs to go in it. My original plan was like an Opel double overhead cam 6, 20 CL, 20 whatever it is, Calibra motor. That kind of got a bit stalled by the fact you can't get parts for them. So no rods in Australia, no pistons in Australia, no bearing, no nothing. And importing it was going to cost heaps of money. So I went back to the drawing board and went back to G series, which is what these originally came out with.
The OG.
The OG.
Yes.
And they came out with 161s, which is a 1.6 litre, but then Radios in Australia, which is like a ute, weren't they? Some
little ute,
they were everywhere. Isuzu ute, they had 1.8 and 2 litres. So I spoke to a guy in Melbourne, who's a Gemini guy, has a drag car, and said, can I come down and build an engine? And this is what happened. I've come down to Victoria to build my Gemini engine. Victoria's got a long history with Australian cars. Lots of them were built here. So there's a lot of expertise, a lot of very, very talented people that will be able to help me turn my Gemini engine dreams into reality.
Before the engine can be built, I need to visit the machine shop, which Dynamite Performance in Melbourne have in-house.
Ah, this is awesome.
Australia really does punch above its weight with the quality and performance of the cars that come out of workshops just like this. These guys specialise in Ford Barra motors, having run 6-second passes on a factory block. And they were the first to crack a 7-second pass with a Ford XR6 over a decade ago.
Nut tall.
Out the back, however, is what I'm here to see, which is a machine shop fully equipped to machine blocks, service heads, and grind cranks and camshafts, along with all sorts of other repairs. This niche has become more specialised and less common in the world of throwaway vehicles, but a clever guy called Jordan works here, and he was the last of his kind to be trained in this work before the trade schools closed it down. If all goes well, I'll be assembling this engine tomorrow with Darren and Corey from Gem Racing in their home workshop garage. But our job today is for Jordan to machine the block, the heads and the crankshaft to exact tolerances to make a strong and reliable engine. They stopped releasing this engine in Australia nearly 40 years ago, so complete motors are getting harder to come across. But they aren't particularly expensive as they were just a run-of-the-mill ute motor. It just so happens that Isuzu made them pretty tough, with thick cylinder walls and a strong bottom end. By adding some forged internals, you can increase the potential power output anywhere from 2 to 10 times what they came out with back in the 80s, which is just incredible.
Right, so step 1 at the machine shop, we are checking the clearances of the mains and the bearings and the rods, and then the journals on the crank will get ground to match that, so that when we assemble it, which will probably happen tomorrow, everything will be the right tolerance. But all that begins here at the machine shop with Jordan, who is a very, very talented machinist. We're going to see some of his work.
You'll see a machinist constantly measuring, taking notes and measuring again, because the tiny details you check now matter later on when you're on the dyno or flat at the end of 4th gear somewhere. The first job is to grind the crank. This requires some pretty impressive equipment and some grinding stones the size of a table. Jordan first has to dress the machine and the stone itself to make sure the profile is correct for the crank. Grinding and balancing the crank means the rods and bearings fit perfectly and prevents vibrations that shake the motor to bits. This process can take up to 2 hours to do properly because multiple passes are required to make sure the surfaces are perfectly smooth and round.
Just like a brand new one.
Just like a brand new one. Look at that. Well done, man. That's killer. So now we're going to move on to the block. We're going to deck it so it's perfectly flat, ready for assembly.
There was a time where replacement engines were prohibitively expensive, and so engine rebuilding was a more affordable way to get your car running again. That's why there was an engine reconditioner on nearly every corner. Well, not every corner, but at least 1 or 2 in each town. It was also more common because engines themselves weren't necessarily as reliable and things did wear out quickly. We're spoilt these days by quality factory parts that do seem to last, but when chasing power in an engine like this, you still have to go back and use all these complex machines to make it possible.
All right, plan is that's going with Darren while we stay here and give this a bath. It can take up to an hour. And then I'm going to bring that with me to Darren's place. We're going to kick into it.
There are heaps of stories out there of fresh engines being ruined by a tiny bit of swarf or metal shavings. This hot wash process is particularly important to clear out any leftover metal. It's also why engines are usually assembled away from any drilling or cutting equipment. An hour or so in this high pressure hot wash should sort it out nicely. While the oversized dishwasher does its thing, we're going to make sure the pistons and rods are going to get along.
It's so light. Front wheel drive pistons.
Yeah.
Front wheel drive pistons.
Yep, all we could
Dude,
get.
you ordered the wrong
all
ones.
we could get. We could only get front wheel drive.
You ordered the wrong ones. I wanted all-wheel drive pistons in my rear-wheel drive car.
Front wheel drive only.
While we are waiting for the parts to go through the washer, including the block, we're in the engine room. We're going to put the pistons onto the rods to save some time later on at Darren's place because we have basically split up to get stuff done quicker.
The aim here is to make sure the gudgeon pin, the thing that connects the rod to the piston, slides easily so the piston doesn't bind up on it. It's the same with the big and small ends of the rod, and it turns out they do need a little bit of adjustment, and luckily, Jordan has the tools and the knowledge to get that done. Half of our engine is clean, and it's been nearly 8 hours since we started work on the motor this morning. Now it's time to chuck the rest of it in the hot wash while we clean up.
In case you're wondering why the engine looks like it's got some kind of disease, it's because it was painted yellow. We hit it with some black paint just earlier, but the hot wash has stripped it off a little bit, so we'll have to paint it again. But that's fine, at least it's clean. You don't want any metal bits in there messing with your engine. It's a new day on the Gemini engine build. Spent all day yesterday at the machine shop, and today is the day where the engine is going to get bolted together. Now, all the best stuff in Australia, especially for cars like this, comes out of little sheds in the backyard, which is exactly where I'm going to see the guys at Gem Racing, a father and son duo, and they're going to help me screw this engine together. Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Get it done? Like a giant Lego kit, man. Look at it.
Corey and Darren have hit the block with some black paint, so it's looking a little bit less sex spec. All the parts are laid out on the table and ready to be Legoed together. Darren has built more engines than he cares to recall, and over time has made and calibrated a range of tools to suit these specific motors.
Your race car has calibrated that gauge, hasn't it?
That's
You know what I mean? Like you're referencing it against...
It's like the Dyno.
Referencing it against that.
Yeah.
And how quick did that go in the quarter mile?
838.
830.
With about just over 900 horsepower.
900 horsepower, 830.
We're starting with the head. The valves and valve seals are going in, and then the springs and retainers. The cam can be dropped in once it's back home on the block, so next we're going to move over and install the bearings, check and measure everything and use a heap of assembly lube. After that, the crank can go in and we can complete the bottom end.
It's a big moment because the crank is in. Bearings are going in, head's getting done, it's all coming together quick now. Look at that, beautiful. So Darren, what are we going to do about the fact we've got a front wheel drive piston in there?
No, just drive the car backwards.
Look at that, fellas. Stoked?
Getting it done.
Serious business here. That's these boys looking stoked. Done just a couple in your time, haven't you, Darren?
Yeah.
Just a few.
Quite a few.
Note to self for future. 7 on intake, 9 on exhaust. Does that sound right? 007 and 009. And that's how you set them. That's it. Super easy. The cherry sensor goes through there. It picks up on that dowly looking thing.
That's at top dead center.
That's that's at top dead center now. Cool. So I guess that's our offset. It spins that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we just before by the looks of it, that's with it at top dead center. Note to self.
And 989 it was getting turboed.
Oh, no way. Full early turbo. But no EFI back then, hey? Draw through. Is that where the carb is like basically on the front of the turbo? And it sends boosted fuel and air through in one go?
As old school as it gets.
Yeah. Was it fun?
Yeah, it was alright. I didn't know what I was doing, so we were blowing it up, and then we were fixing it, and then we were blowing it up again, but...
So kind of no different to now then?
No different.
Well, there's not blowing up anymore so much.
No, well, it's in one piece.
And how'd you get into this mess?
Him.
His fault.
Is the easiest way to put it.
But did you drive this now, right?
Yes.
Because this does 8.
It's gone 8.3 at 165 mile an hour.
And you were driving it?
Yeah.
What's that feel like?
scary. In a way, I'm sort of used to it now, but yeah, it does get a little bit, when it moves around a little bit, it gets a bit scary.
Now, I know he doesn't say much, but
Yeah.
I think he's a bit proud of that because he showed me a photo of you pushing a Gemini
Yep.
when you were a kid,
Yep.
and now you're driving it.
1999, I would have been 1. And then, yeah, the wheel standing it in 2019, so.
Oh, dude, that's
it was
so
pretty
cool. And you guys just hanging in the shed building Isuzu engines.
Yep. Forklift motors.
Forklift engines. That's doing a lot more than pushing forklifts around, that's for sure. It's looking good, dudes. I'm so excited.
Everything's all done, yeah? Because I just dropped that on.
It is.
That's it.
We're looking good. Not much to go now. We literally got to put that on it, put a sump on it,
Basically, they're tossed up.
trigger kit, couple of brackets.
Tight. Normally, you got to line these up a certain way for the distributor, but because you're not going to have a dizzy, this can go in anywhere.
Oh, good. Distributorless because we are using the crank trigger.
No, we're using it as a breather.
And, we're using the hole as a breather, aren't we? But normally there'd be like a big dizzy thing going on down there.
Yeah.
Here it is, people. Finished and ready to stick in the car and head back to Sydney. It's night time, so I'm going to be driving through the night with this in the boot. And then it's going in the car. You freaking legends. Thank you and thank you. Could have done it without you, boys.
Oh, that's good.
I did, originally I was going to do the twin cam stuff, and then I kind of ended up just going, you know what? I think we got to go back to the roots, back to what I had in my very first car, which is a G Series, which is this. And thanks to these legends, it's going to get started. It's going to be running soon. Right now, we're going to load it into the boot of my car. I'm going to drive through the night and go back to Sydney.
Can I also say thanks to Lee Thomas.
Yep.
Thomas for parts for the head gaskets. And also Darren O'Neill as well. Also, all Gemini guys.
All the Gemini guys. This is what this is absolutely what I've learned.
Community.
It really is. And like one of the reasons I wanted to come here and build it with you in this shed is because this is what Gemini people are doing, eh? All the time. They're in sheds, they're rebuilding cars like Darren from WA, he was over as well. This is cool. It's what it's all about. It's fun. So, but yeah, I'm going. Got a bit of a drive ahead of me. It's only 1,000 Ks. Here we go.
At least you're going back with something.
I'm going back with something very cool. The engine's in the wrong end, boys. Should make some alright power with both of them. That one will probably last longer than the one in the front.
No head gaskets on this one, mate.
Yeah, well, only one. Helps. Half as much chance of it blowing up. Let's go.
Darren was bang on. The Gemini community continues to keep the dream alive, and now I'm even more motivated to get the car working. And luckily for me, I've got an old friend to help push it to the next level waiting for me back in Sydney.
All right, everybody, we have an engine, and thanks to my friend and yours, Benny, Mechanical Stig, he found this on a farm somewhere hundreds of kilometres out of Sydney, and he brought it to me, which is amazing. He might show up a bit later today. So we've got a gearbox, we've got a tail shaft, which yes, it is tiny, and a built G180.
I've got the book. I bought this, I've kept this for 22 years. Just for this purpose. I knew this was going to happen one day, so do we know what's in this thing? Well, you know, you were there.
What's the vibe with these old engines, though? I mean, like, when I saw it apart, it's massive, and they're iron block. Like, what's the reason why people are even still using these? Because I wasn't going to, but I got convinced.
Well, as you know, this is a world car, so they use this platform. It was like one of the original platform sharing vehicles, so you had like Korean version, South Korean, you had European, you had Americans, Chevettes and that sort of thing. But in Australia we use the Isuzu version, which is obviously the Japanese one, so it came with the actual engine that I believe it should have had in it. And Isuzu is obviously a very well-renowned diesel engine builder, which is probably their most famous for.
Trucks.
But they did build cars back in the day. So the thing about these engines is they're like, let's build a G161. And they went, okay. So they just built a diesel engine and made it petrol. So they're very strong. Yeah. Everything's way bigger than you would expect to find on a very low power output petrol engine. So that's great for us, or for you.
And what's changed? I mean, like, I got into these in the 90s. You maybe a decade earlier, you were like running around with this kind of stuff.
Why is it that back in the day it was hard to get 60 or 70 kilowatts out of them, and now people are making 1,000 horsepower or near that on what is essentially the same engine? Like, what's changed?
Couldn't get air into them.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to get air into them now. And also, one of the best things you can do to an old engine like this is obviously update it to fuel injection, modern ignition systems, that sort of thing. So you can get air into it with the obvious bits, you can get fuel into it and in control with a proper ECU like a Haltech, and light it on fire with some modern ignition.
Is it anyone else, or is it just me absolutely frothing at the idea of all those things happening today? I actually need to lean on the car because otherwise I'll lose my legs. So I haven't put an engine in a Gemini for like 2 decades. I don't know if Al's done it either for 2 or 3. So we've got our book, which is actually just to make sure we don't stuff it up, and we're going to attempt to get the engine in the car, and then the fun begins. So should we just try and put it together, get a clutch and some engine mounts and stuff? I've got all that, I think.
You got a hoist, so it's way easier than the traditional method of lying in the gravel.
That's right. Okay, well, let's just see what happens, eh?
Let's do it.
There are some differences with this JDM car. It uses some parts found in older Australian Geminis and also some newer ones that you won't. Luckily, Darren from Just Geminis eyeballed it earlier and sent me a bunch of correct new old stock parts to help make this a smooth process. The engine being so small and simple means mounting it should actually be pretty straightforward. It also helps there's basically nothing else in the engine bay to get in the way. Once the engine is mounted, then we can move on to installing the rest of the driveline and the fun bits.
Engine is in, which means the car is Instagram finished. Take a photo, upload it, boom, done. You have built a car. For us though, we've got to put a clutch in this thing and then get the gearbox in, which we're going to do with the engine in the car. This is an extreme clutch. They sent this over. It has a sprung center, but it also kind of has a puck set up here. It's a bit of a hybrid. We've used these in some other projects and they've actually been excellent, because I have struggled in the past with clutches that are either way too heavy or they just can't take the power and you spin them on the dyno, which is a massive waste of time. I feel like this is a good compromise and I'm feeling good about this one. We also got a flywheel, which they supplied, and a clutch cable. So that's sort of the entire setup that we need: bearings, centering tool, all the stuff that we need. We're going to put that all together, put it on the back of the engine, and then install the gearbox.
I've gone with a 5-speed manual gearbox. That should handle the torque of a naturally aspirated car just fine. But considering who is in the room with me right now, it's highly likely there's going to be a heap more torque created than what Isuzu intended. That said, plenty of people are running them in Geminis with double or triple the factory power with no issues. I guess time will tell. Once the clutch and flywheel are installed, we can lift the gearbox into place. It didn't come with a rear mounting plate, so we're going to make one. There's a heap of fiddly jobs to do, like replacing the old drum brake cylinders and installing the tail shaft.
Interestingly, when Alan's around, everything in your life hits boost. So not only does he turbo cars and make them hit boost, your life hits boost, because we have got so much done. We've got an engine mounted, a gearbox in. We even had to make our own adapter plate to make that mount fit, tail shaft. We even did the drum brakes. And now I have an alternator off a Nissan Patrol. What have you got?
We've got a brake booster off a Isuzu Gemini.
We hope.
Isuzu.
Isuzu, yeah, we hope that that's what it is. So now we're going to put this stuff in place in the engine bay so that we can do what?
Put turbos on it. Shiny things.
Shiny things.
That's how you get the Instagram.
Yeah, the likes. Get it properly Instagram finished. We're going to chuck this on. We're going to chuck our turbo gear on so we can take photos of it and stare at it while we drink a beer later. That's actually what's going to happen. Now, I've never expressly spoken about it, But absolutely, this engine is being turboed. Why would you turbo one of these, Alan?
Because it's an engine.
Asked and answered. Right here, I have a manifold that's made by a gentleman up in Queensland. He makes Gemini turbo manifolds. Could we have whizzed these together with some steam pipe? Absolutely, we could have. Alan has the skills to do that, but we saved ourselves a day and a half by buying one already made, proven, used on lots of Geminis, a really nice piece of kit. And on top of this, we are putting
This bad boy. This is a G25 550 Garrett, 0.72 internal wastegate, V-band in and out housing. It's a very nice bit of exhaust housing there. I'm a big fan of that. It's going to make it pretty neat, straight on. No wastegates going everywhere in this case, because it's not that kind of car, is it?
just neat, exactly. And so when you talk about what turbo you're going to choose, you'd normally pick your power figure and kind of work backwards. I don't really have one in mind, but I know that that kind of turbo that's that neat, packaged so nicely, has the headroom to make some good power, and when we tune it, I guess we'll find out what it's going to do. That came from Baxter's MTQ, who are a Garrett supplier in Sydney, thank you very much, and it's going to be a good thing. It should just V-band straight onto this. So should we put it in and see what happens?
Do it.
Okay, we are pulling the front of the car off. Why are we doing that? Because we need to put an intercooler in this thing. Yes, we are going turbo, of course, but I would say this is probably the scariest bit so far because we have to cut the car up. And before you say it, I'll say it so you don't have to. Yes, you should do this before you paint your car, but also didn't know at that point exactly what engine was going to go in or how it was going to be done or even what the intercooler would look like. So what do you think we should do, Alan?
So we've got a couple of options. The problem here is we've got this part of this panel here means that we can't put an intercooler in from either side at the moment. So the options are either cut out that part of the panel, which is part of your radiator support, and that seems to be from our Googling what most people do, but that doesn't mean it's the best way. So we're just going to investigate the possibility of just unpicking this whole front valence, is that what they call them? Something like that.
It's only spot welded in.
And that way we can pull that off and then make that bolt on, and then the intercooler can come in from here and there'll be less cutting, just basically just cutting for the actual pipes of the intercooler to go through. So
there's not much space. Being an early model car, there is not much space in the front of these. The later Geminis there was. These ones, it's all metal as well, which kind of in some ways makes it harder than just chopping up your plastic bumper bar. This whole front is just decorative, so none of that's structural. In behind here where the radiator support is. So we want to do minimal cutting to that, and if that means just picking this off to get access, I think that's the way to go. So that's what we're going to try and do. We don't know. It could change halfway, let's just see.
This is where I'm relying heavily on Alan's experience. He's mounted thousands of intercoolers to cars that were never designed to have them there. Experience means you're looking and thinking a few steps ahead to prevent problems later on, with things like radiators or pipes not fitting properly. There's just a few spot welds holding this front piece in place, and the rest of it is bolted.
Woo! Success. That's the feeling of success. So it wasn't really held on by much because it's just been sort of tack welded in place. So what we'll do is we'll repair all this, fill it up, flatten it so that we can either make that removable with bolts or weld it back on later. Intercooler, let's do it.
I've got myself an intercooler made by Plasma Man here in Sydney, and we'll be seeing them later on for a few more parts to complete the build. This intercooler has been designed to fit the early model Geminis, and it's about as big as you can go without some major surgery to the front end. All that's required is the existing holes in the radiator support to be expanded to fit the pipes, which have been tacked in place so we can change the angles if necessary, before dropping the cooler back for final welding.
This is the Ryobi cordless die grinder. Absolutely excellent. They call it a die grinder, and you can use die grinding bits on it. That's over there now. But you can also use stuff like this, which is cool. So like the little sandy flapper discs, 4 different speeds, low speed for something like this, absolutely, so it doesn't blow apart. Perfect for what I'm doing now, just like rounding out holes and doing stuff like that. Excellent bit of kit. One of my favorites.
Once we've made room for the inlet and outlet pipes, we have to work out how to mount the cooler securely to the car. Al's going to weld on some bungs that have threads tapped into them, and then we'll make up some aluminium brackets that can be bolted to both the cooler and the front of the Gemini.
The intercooler is now in place. After chopping up a bit of the car, don't worry, it's okay, it'll be fine. It looks good. You probably noticed that the intercooler is not actually welded yet. So this intercooler came from Plasma Man, who are in Sydney, and they specialise in intercoolers, intake manifolds, all sorts of mad fabricated stuff. And the next thing that we need to get in place, we've obviously got our turbo and a manifold, but we don't have an inlet manifold. Alan, got any tips about inlet manifolds, and if you're doing an old car like this, what the go is?
Any tips? Well, usually if it's carburetted engine like this one was, sometimes you can get a EFI version of the engine, which may exist on this particular engine, but I don't think it did here.
Like Radiator stuff.
Maybe, yeah. But they're usually not very nice and often come over the top, so they're not much use. But otherwise, you're going to go for an aftermarket one, which you can make, or you can go to Plasma Man and get a really nice one.
One like this. So this is a billet Plasma Man G180 inlet manifold. And look at this. Yes, I'm going to pull the tape off later, but I just want to show you how nice that sits. So that sits in there, kind of like that, on a stud. And look at this, look at the run there from intercooler into inlet with an electronic throttle. It'll go there. But how did this come about? Let me show you. Let's go on a little adventure.
Over the many years of planning this build, I'd worked out that a new intake manifold was going to be the neatest and best performing way to get fuel and air into this old motor. I contacted Shannon from Plasma Man and he said I could come down and see how one gets made. These guys crank out a huge amount of Australian made parts for the performance market and have been for decades.
So we're down here at Plasma Man with Shannon, who is the head of sales, and this is our IKEA flat pack intake manifold.
To make one of the runners here, we obviously have to start with a billet block, which is something like this. Normally weighs around 18 kilos. When it gets to the finished product, you're looking at about 2 kilos.
And so, same again here, is that a fuel rail before and after?
Yes, so that's the extrusion that we start off with, and that will get machined down and anodised and turn into this product here.
This is one of those areas I think it's worth spending money on because it brings you into the current decade, current century. You get to use all modern injectors, all standard stuff that'll fit. It's O-ring to the block. You get your inlet in the right spot. You can do a drive-by-wire throttle in the right spot, and you can just sort of spec it from a menu and hit go, and then in a week or two, it's made, right?
Yeah, and also you'll have better airflow distribution to each cylinder versus
performance as well.
Yeah.
If it can be made on a CNC machine and welded, then it can be made here to an incredibly high standard. And it's one thing to get air and fuel into your engine, but aesthetics play a role in this as well. And an awesome looking turbo on one side is complemented perfectly by a custom intake on the other. Once the parts have been CNC'd, then they're handed over to the expert welders, which is where I'm headed, and I'm gonna try and convince them to let me have a go.
Fun fact, there's a photo of me and Aiden at a Mighty Car Mods meet in 2016, which is this, and we just took another one now, which is this. That's so hectic, man, I can't believe that. That's so cool.
I'm going to let you weld it. I'm going to see how you go first. We're going to try and get some practice in. Always good practice, you know what I mean? So we'll try that, and then we'll see how we go.
My first foray into TIG welding was to grab a cheap machine and just give it a try. That was years ago, and I've joined plenty of metal together, but it's far from perfect and nothing like the works of art that a career welder can manage. And they get there through a mix of skill, practice, patience, and correct machine setup. And it's that last point that as a novice you can get a lot from. If you get a chance to practice on a well set up machine that's optimized for the material, you can get a feel for what it should look like and then keep adjusting everything until you reach that level. Aiden's had me practice on some spare parts and said it was good enough that I can do the same part on the finished manifold. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out, and all he's got to do to finish it off is weld the plate for the electronic throttle.
All done?
All done.
Wow, man, well done. That's so good. Look at it. And that is going to be on the car feeding sweet boosted air into that engine and making a lot of smiles.
I hope so.
I love it. It's like a work of art. Good on you, brother. Good job. Smashed it. So this is an absolutely amazing piece of kit. I'm so happy with how it turned out. It was so awesome to meet Aidan and do these welding and get a lot of tips from him. This is going to bolt on beautifully onto our engine now. So the next step is to also put this on, work out where our pipe's going to go, but also work out our throttle setup.
This is an e-throttle. If you've ever listened to me talk crap about throttles, it's always e-throttle is life. So much easier, so much better in every single way to run an e-throttle than a cable. So that's what we're going to do. Of course, we've got to mount a pedal in the car, but that's no big deal. The rest is done by the Haltech ECU, which is a good thing. All your auto control, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can limit power, you can do everything, and cruise control. So there's a lot going for an e-throttle.
And if you're making an intake manifold like this, you can also spec exactly what you want. So we've gone for a 60mm one. It is a bit smaller than what you might expect, but looking at the size of our turbo, the size of our intercooler pipes, the size of everything, it's going to give us a nice snappy throttle response, and it will bolt straight onto the front and then go straight into our intercooler pipe. So the next step is to mock this up in place. It actually comes with a bunch of O-rings that seal against there, but for now we're going to just put it in place, bolt it in, and then start making some more pipes using some of Alan's incredible talents. Alan has worked his magic. This has all been tacked together. The pipes look amazing. We did a little bit more trimming around here just to make it really, really neat. We will pull that off later and take it to Plasma Man where they will weld up this and also the end tanks of their intercooler. Next, we're going to do radiator. So we had to do intercooler first, so we knew how much space we had for our radiator. Now, I did buy a Gemini one. Doesn't fit at all. So Christian from Phoenix Radiators, he brought me a KE71. He's a Toyota guy, drives a Majesta, and a KE71 looks like it's going to fit, but we are going to have to modify that too. So we're going to jam that down in there, see how it fits, and then make whatever we've got to make it fit.
This is the scary and the fun part. The more you make custom stuff, the more you only have yourself to blame if it doesn't work. But on the upside, it's a great feeling when it all just does. All these parts are battling for a small amount of space in the front of the car, and I'm just loving watching it play out.
You've waited so long, time and time again. All you say is that I did you wrong. So you turn your back on the world, pretending to be strong, but you're crying deep inside. You're still hurting from the lies, and I'm the man that you despise. Now you put up a wall. Now you act like you don't know me at all. Every time you see me, know it's not the same. Brand new you, but the feelings ain't changed. Do you still see me and you together? Or should I let go of you right now? Want me bad for what? For every moment that you made me smile. Can I just see you and stay for a while? I'm trying to find who we were before the lies I learned. So take me back to this time.
We have had a very busy couple of days and got a lot done. I've been able to cross off a bunch of things on my list, but I've also had to add some. Alan's about to turn into a pumpkin, which means he has to go back to Queensland, because if he doesn't, I don't know, his superpowers start draining away or something. Is that how it works?
Need the sun.
Needs the sun. Needs to charge up, full He-Man style. Anyway, no, Captain Planet that charges from the sun. Is that right? Anyway, Gemini's looking amazing. This I'm going to take off now that I've hacked it up and hacked the grille. I'll probably actually give this lower panel back to VIP Smash and Mechanical who painted the car, because it's now like I can bolt it on and off, which is really easy. I cracked the paint a bit down here and also obviously cutting it, I don't know, to rust. So I'll give them the whole thing, they'll be able to paint that.
the same time I'll probably give them the grille, tidy up some of my cut marks here, and give them the grille to do the same satin black as the rest of the car. And at the same time, while that's off, I'll give the intercooler back to Plasma Man for them to weld it up. So there's a bit of outsourcing going on, but it's kind of what's necessary to get it to the next level, which is what I feel like this is. So we've got turbo drains happening. We're waiting on parts for turbo oil feed, waiting on some fuel system parts. That's stuff that I will continue on, unfortunately, without Alan, which is sad because I like having Alan here. Thanks, Alan. What a mad dog. Darren's going to work his magic with the heater boxes and restoring them. How do you do that?
We just take them all apart, get rid of the old foam and then just replace it.
Oh, because you can unscrew the whole things and just split them?
Yeah, so we just need to put this sort of insulation on here to stop it leaking. And then we've already taken this apart. We're going to put some more on this side and on the little flappy doors that are inside here.
So from the factory, it just has like sticky backed foam on it?
Yep, that's
and we're
right,
just
yep.
replacing it?
Yeah, because the old stuff just turns to dust and then the heater box doesn't really blow air out very well.
The plan is to do a bunch of this stuff like heater boxes in and around the engine bay and inside so that when we start trimming, it's all in place.
Fixes like this may not be glamorous, but a working heater is a requirement to get registered and on the road. Why? Well, to demist your windscreen. A bonus being you'll stay toasty in your underpants on a drive to the snow. I don't know who owns these, I don't think they're mine. I have a few leftover bits I forgot to paint last time, so while they get some primer and black paint, Darren is going to refoam my heater box. Next, I'm going to get started on the wiring. Dave will be helping me later on, but to save him some time, I'm going to strip back the old loom so we can lay it out and work out which bits we do and don't need.
I've been stripping back wiring so we can be ready to plug everything in and then remake our wiring loom. I also need to do the throttle pedal. This is because we're going to be doing carpet soon, so the pedal needs to be in place. This is the original Gemini one. It's a cable throttle. It's very old school. This is out of a Gen 4 Subaru Liberty. Now these are Alan Turbo Yoda's pedal of choice because it's got a metal bracket on the back, which is easy to weld. You can also cut and shut this to make it sit where you want. And actually, they're not that different. So I'll be able to use this bottom bolt hole to locate it. It looks sort of in the same place. And then I'm just going to change the way that this actual pedal sits here by cutting and welding that to get it roughly in the same place, and then chuck one extra bolt through the top. And that should be E-throttle in the Gemini. Pretty cool.
Push me harder.
The pedal is looking excellent, and now my mate Brad has arrived to work his magic on the trim.
Reflections of smoke and fire.
Next up, we are going to try and refit the glass. I've actually got an expert glass guy along to help me. I realise you can just fit these in with a bit of string and that's the trick, but I don't want to risk leaks, and I also want to learn from someone who knows what they're doing. So we've got new seals, which is great. So these old ones are pretty crusty. Then you go straight in the bin, and then we are going to put some nice new seals on these and slap them in the car.
Thanks to the efforts of Darren and Brad, a lot of stuff has happened. Me and Darren actually test fitted the front headlights. We've still got to do a lot here. The intercooler is on its way back from Plasma Man this morning, so we can refit all that and make it all work. The bit I'm very, very stoked about is that the inside is coming together. Now, when I bought this car, one of the best things about it was the interior. Gemini's normally, you know, they're this old, they're normally very thrust. Look at that. It looks brand new. And that's just the door trim, just reattached with all the sound ending in there behind there. I made some new clips. We've got new rubbers, so it's basically brand new. The inside's done. Brad did an amazing job trimming and fixing all the trim. I'm just blown away by his skills. We've got a parcel shelf, our rubbers, front and rear windows, and all these sort of B-pillar trims. You can't even tell that it's been done. It just looks so good. So today we're going to continue lots of small details that make the car. I'm going to start the wiring. Dave from Haltech's going to give me a hand with that later on. I'm going to get it started. He's going to finish it. And we're one step closer to a running Gemini.
I think there are a few moments where your project car build can stall. One is paint and the other is right now. The reassembly of lots of parts that on their own don't make much difference, but are necessary to get the car back on the road. The costs for this stuff can add up quickly as you discover things are worn out or broken. That effort that you put in cataloguing parts as you strip the car pays off now as you aren't hunting around the shed or marketplace trying to find replacements. It's also when you discover that some parts just will not fit or will require extensive mods to make work. It also turns out we somehow ended up with incorrect rear shocks, so we're swapping them out. I've struggled with the radiator on this car and it's gone in and out at least 20 times and I'm still not done. The plan is to get as much in place as we can before Dave arrives to wire the car and install the ECU.
Intercooler is back from Plasma Man. It's been welded, had its mad badge put on. They've actually welded the tank to the core. They've done all the welds here from what me and Alan sort of roughed in. I put the radiator in. I have round back, welded the holes through here so nothing will rust, and then coated all this in like a deadening material, tar stuff. And now the cooler can go back in. Yes, so good. Maybe wait till the paint dries a bit though, eh?
The back of the Gemini is looking a little bit bare, so Darren is going to install the rear tail lights and surrounds. They got painted in the same satin black as the bumpers. And speaking of bumpers, yes, the JDM Geminis like this had a totally different design to what we got in Australia. Over here, it was all about chrome and they're a little bit smaller also. Speaking of things that are shiny, the Plasma Man intake manifold can now be installed permanently onto the engine. It needs fittings installed for brake vacuum, ECU map sensor hose and a purge solenoid, so they can all go in, followed by some injectors I got from Raceworks. I'll whiz up some spacers on the lathe so the height of the injectors is spot on, and then the O-rings can go on and we can bolt it to the engine. Next, the intercooler can go on now that it's been fully welded and finished.
We have made some excellent progress. I've also got the intake manifold on for good, injectors in, radiator in for good, front mount intercooler all welded up and in for good, looks amazing. Front of the car's all welded and repaired and all through here where it was potentially gonna rust. That's all done, and a whole lot of painting has also been done. So now the next big step is wiring and also an exhaust. So that's two other things that I will get some friends to help me with. I am going as next level with this as I possibly can, and that does mean calling some favours of some good mates to just make it that little bit better. I'm very happy with the progress. I'm very excited to get it started and running. The Gemini needs a fuel tank. Now the original cars, they're carby, they're low pressure, they're very, very simple and easy. I'm running EFI, I'm running high pressure fuel, and for that, I'm gonna put an awesome fuel tank in the thing. Now I actually used one of these in our Brumby build. It works so well. I met Hanny recently and he makes fuel tanks. So let's go and have a look.
I've hacked up plenty of OEM fuel systems to get them to work on the cheap. But for a car as special as this, I'm going all out on a brand new custom-made tank that will reliably supply all the fuel this car will ever need.
Oh, look at this. Before and after?
After, yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, so pretty much beginning of it starts with a 3D scan in the car.
Yep.
Gets modelled, obviously, so everything's pretty accurate. Yeah. Got to start with a good car.
So you guys do it in CAD?
Yeah, have to.
Oh, right. So this is CAD design?
Yeah, CAD design. It's even CNC cut and bent.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it just eliminates as much human error as you can, just to get it more consistent.
Why tanks for like old school cars? Why did you find that was the first thing to do?
Because they're older, they rust out easier.
Yeah.
So they need to replace them a bit more. A lot of people are pretty much building a lot more of these old school cars. Mm-hmm. So they need bigger fuel requirements. obviously bigger fuel requirements means new pumps. Instead of running the old surge tanks out of the standard tanks, and then just obviously you got the hanger.
Yeah.
Hanger's got the outlets on it.
Like
Yeah,
this.
you can pull it out, yeah.
This is your hanger design as well, right?
Yeah, so a friend of mine from Motorsport 3D helped me with the design and manufacture of them.
Yep.
Essentially, you can hold 3 pumps, pins instead of stalks.
Yeah.
Obviously, the inlets and outlets. And the thing is, it's a welding ring with an O-ring. So it doesn't have a bolt-in plate with a cork gasket and then a O-ringed sort of plate.
So you basically get it folded up, you weld the whole thing,
Yep.
you put the different fittings on depending what everyone wants,
Yep.
and then what else happens to get it to this stage?
Pretty much gets powder coated. So we powder coat it. Obviously, install the brand new fuel level sender. It's a solid stainless rod type, not a arm type.
Yeah.
So this is something that'll be used in a lot of marine applications. So they're used to a lot of jumps and bangs, and it's got a billet neck. It doesn't look like it has a mount, but that's because the factory one doesn't as well.
Yep.
So it's obviously to get easier in and out than a factory tank.
Yep.
It's got the ORBs one. Obviously, you can use one for a breather, one for the overflow in the tank.
Yep.
And it'll slide into your rubber grommet.
So the 3 pumps go into those 3 fittings, but actually come out in one huge dash well.
Yep.
So there's guys that'd be like over 1,000 horsepower that could use
100%.
this. Oh, that's
100%.
pretty cool, man. Well, that's overkill for what I need. But what I love about this is, new tank, chuck the rusty thing away. That was the drama I had with the Brumby, right?
Yeah.
You just can't get tanks anymore.
Yeah,
Actually, another one's
scarce.
not as bad, but this is just a nice way to go EFI. And it's made here in Australia, which is cool, by Honey at Hack Fabrications. This is what it used to look like. This is the one that's going in my car looks like.
That's it.
This is mad, dude. Thanks so much.
No
Can't
worries.
wait to put it in.
No worries, man. Anytime.
There's something great about fresh fabricated parts for old cars. It gives them a new lease on life and unlocks the potential for big reliable power, thanks to some clever engineering and fabrication skills.
There's no getting around the fact this is an old car, and old project cars suffer from old car things, which can be stuff that doesn't work, electronics that don't work, wiring that doesn't work. The Gemini falls into that category. It's not that old, so the wiring loom is still usable from what I've seen, but I'm going to replace a bunch of stuff, and the way I'm going to control that engine and that turbo is with a Haltech Nexus R3. That is an awesome bit of kit. That's going to do injection, it's going to do spark, it's going to do triggering, it's going to do boost control, it's going to do everything. But not only that, for other functions of the car, we're also going to control with a PD16. So that power distribution module, think of it as a very, very smart fuse box. It does a whole lot of other stuff too, but it also gives us lots of other options for inputs and outputs. The only other thing that's really, really helpful in a time like this is a Davo. Your friend and mine, Davo, he's offered to come down. Everyone's getting really excited about this car. I think it's just in that state where it's like...
I like that you've been reeling people in for years and just like, when,
now.
when?
The
Time
answer
is
is
now.
now. So Davo, can you give me a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to put in it and why we're going to put this stuff in it?
Beautiful. We are, like you said, we're going to start with the R3. So like you said, we're going to do all of the spark, we're going to do injection, we're going to do all of the engine functionality. And the way I'm kind of going to attack it, I think, is we're going to do all of the engine vitals that keep the engine alive. So we'll do fans through this, we'll do fuel pump through this, and then we'll do all the body side of things through the PD16. They talk to each other, and then they run the car as a collective together.
Amazing.
All the sensors, brand new sensors for everything. So we'll do oil pressure, fuel pressure, end temp, coolant pressure, end temp. And we'll do brand new air temp, brand new coolant temp, replace everything that was on the engine. Ignition upgrade.
Coils, yep.
Fairly substantial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compared to what you would have had. So we're going to go coil per plug.
We already put a triggering system on the engine when we built the engine. You might have seen the little trigger wheel on the front. So we've got that on the front and then a sensor at the top so we know where the cam is and where the crank is. And that's what tells the Haltech when to make this go bang.
Correct. Full sequential, direct fire. What else we got? Boost control. So we're going to do the boost control. You can have your keypad control. So you can do a quick boost control up, down. You can have like 7 different modes or 4, depending how crazy you want to go. We'll hide that nicely. Nice and discreet, so it's just sort of away and it keeps the character of the car.
So this is all new. Obviously, we've got a wiring loom here.
We've got a PD16 wiring loom.
Let's go and have a look at the wiring. Rear wheels, fuel tank, through the middle of the car. Not much happening in the middle of the car. Then that looks like what goes in the dash. That looks like what comes out into the passenger guard, and that's what goes out into the driver's side. So you've got your headlights and you've got all your other things in there.
Yeah.
And I stripped all the tape off so we could sort of lay it out and see what we can get rid of and what we can update.
Yeah. What I would like to do, because it's going to save us I'm going to say probably about a week.
Really?
And that's substantial.
Yeah.
I reckon we'd keep all the back stuff because realistically, there's nothing in here that's going to be too much except for the fuel system.
Yeah, fuel system's going to demand more than what this can handle.
Correct.
Okay.
So we'll run something else with this, which is a bigger wire. We'll do that maybe from the PD16 because it's got the longer loom.
Sure.
So we'll do all that to the back of the car. We've got spares because obviously we've got an old fuel pump wire, so we can utilise the spares for anything else that we want to do. There's window demisters in here, there's all that circuit in here, so I think we'll just save ourselves probably a day of wiring.
Yeah, because you can remake that. If you've got a really old project or something where you
100%.
don't have a loom, you can make this from
100%.
scratch.
And that's what I came here with a mindset of doing.
Yeah. And if this wiring was all really old and baked and
Correct.
broken?
The fact that this is still so flexible, you can do that. If you do that with some of the looms that I've seen come out of cars, they just crack and fall apart and would make a mess. So
I guess this is late 70s, but the car's had
it's had a good life.
A good life.
This is all inside, so you can tell that it's just a whole different.
And interestingly, the interior is in good condition, meaning that it hasn't been sitting baking in the sun.
Exactly. Whereas this stuff that's sat in the engine bay, particularly this side, because this side over here, this is all on the exhaust side.
Oh.
So it's all baked and just a little bit more brittle and harder, definitely when you get down to that alternator side. So
delete that.
I reckon to keep it looking really, really nice, like it is currently, I reckon we go from here and delete.
We could probably make a 6-hour video on wiring this thing from scratch.
60.
60. It's going to take 60 hours, isn't it? But we're going to just show you the highlights, the best of how to get this done, and particularly once it's finished, give you a really good rundown of what it looks like to show Dave's amazing handiwork. And I'm excited about this bit actually, because this means when this is in and the thing's full of fluids and the fuel system's plumbed, it's ready to start.
What's crazy about what we're going to do, it's not hard.
Not really.
It's not hard.
No.
When you go through every single wire, and Al said it a million times in his videos, every single one of these wires has a purpose.
Yes.
Except for the spare. there's a fuse in there that says spare.
What I like about laying it out is you can go from the tail light and go, okay, I know what tail light that is, what colour is the wire, and literally trace it.
Yep.
And you know where the switch is, you know how that's triggered, you know where the power comes from, and how things are grounded, because sometimes it can get very confusing. So
this is very achievable, and you guys can do this. It's
so go buy a Gemini.
It's not that difficult.
And stick your Haltech in it.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you'll just go and buy a carby, plug in a few wires and go and do a skid. And sure, that works, but add a turbo, add a modern intake manifold and a bunch of sensors, and all of a sudden, like us, you're just drowning in wires anyway. Every wire has a purpose, and this stuff comes with instructions on how to connect it to get started. There is no denying it's time consuming and can be confusing at times, but I reckon it's totally worth the effort.
We are checking off a lot of things off my massive list. Just looks like this. I've had this running for months now, and we're getting down towards the detail end. Now the wiring is taking shape. It is awesome. Dave is doing an amazing job. It's methodical. He'll tell you, it's not hard. You just have to be methodical. We're plugging everything in. I'm also remembering bits and pieces of stuff that I realise I need, like charcoal canister and purge, and I need to have the emissions the same as when the car came out. That is very important because I do need to get this car through engineering, which is a whole nother step. I'll take on a bit of that, maybe not the whole thing, because you might not have 3 weeks. But anyway, we've got to do things like brakes. We've got to size the brakes correctly to the kind of performance and power that we've got, so I've got a solution for that. We've got to do our breathing system, so off the top here and off where the distributor used to be. What else? Battery, we need a battery. Carpet, trims and seats, that'll be last. I've got to cover my pod filter and got to do purge, fuel breather and block breather. So my next big job is actually fuel system. I've got it set up here, I've got injectors, I've got this, I've got my pulse damper, my fuel pressure sensor. I've got to get the fuel from the new fuel tank up into here. So that's my next job. I'm going to do that while Dave completes the wiring.
Dave is laying out the wiring over the engine so he can work out where each branch of wires goes out from the main loom. He can also then estimate the length and cover and protect it, then finally terminate it with plugs. It's a tried and tested method and it comes together pretty quickly. We've made a heap of progress, so now it's time for Dave to have a day off while I go and get an exhaust.
I'm here to see Chris, Dave and Dugan at Castle Hill Exhaust, and guess what's happening, people? A beautiful 3-inch stainless steel exhaust the whole way from the dump all the way to the back of the car. I'm so excited to see what Chris comes up with, because this exhaust, I just have this feeling, is going to be excellent.
They say that art doesn't require explanations, so I'm just going to let this one run.
above me is an absolutely epic looking 3-inch exhaust system. Chris has done an amazing job. I just enjoy looking at it because it's like a work of art. Anyway, I'm going to do some of the welding on this V-band just so I can get some practice in, and also using Chris's gear. If you get a chance to use someone who welds all the time with their gear, have a go, because it can kind of give you an idea of what it should feel like if you can't quite fine-tune your own equipment. Next step on the Gemini build is the fuel system. I have this beautiful custom-made fuel tank that Hanny at Hack Fabrication's made for me with my fuel hanger. Now this is how it comes. You need to put a fuel pump into it. You also need to wire it. Now Dave is coming to finish off the wiring very soon, which means I got to get my ass into gear and get this side of things plumbed. So essentially I am plumbing the car. That fuel pump there will supply enough fuel for approximately 400 horsepower, which is well comfortably above my power target. So one pump will be enough, but if it's not, it's easy to add more. You can put up to 3 in here. So that's step 1. Let me show you step 2. These are the old fuel lines. This is what was in the Gemini. We pulled them out when we were doing paint. They're quite small. They're fine for supporting 50 horsepower, 60, maybe even 100. But beyond that, you are going to run out of fuel, especially with a high pressure EFI fuel system. But these are not a waste of time. I can use them as templates because I am going to have to bend up new fuel line. You can get hard line like this in stainless or aluminium, depending what you want to do. I haven't done it much before, so I kind of been putting it off because I didn't know if I'd be able to do it. I have the tools to do it, tube benders, flaring tools, and also a tool to straighten this stuff out. I'm just going to go for it, and let's all cross our fingers that it's going to work.
To bend a tube like this without kinking it or restricting flow, you need a tube bender of some description. This helps you get the curves the correct radius to suit your application. There is hardly any room under the floor of a Gemini, and you can see from the original lines how many complex bends were required to even fit those tiny ones in. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge, but you can't eat a mountain without a spoon, so let's get this thing done.
Pump has to go in tank needs to go in. Then I'm going to use these 3 holes, which are the original factory ones, drill them out, put bulkhead fittings in there. Then I've got to get from the tank into those bulkhead fittings and from the bulkhead fittings to the front of the car. So next step, I'm going to put the car in the air and try and work out this fuel line. Never done it. Fingers crossed it works. So I made myself a fuel line. It's a hard line. That is a -8, so plenty of fuel supply, and I followed the factory routing. The lines that the car comes with are very, very small. It didn't work. Sorry, Dave. So instead, yeah, it was a long night building that. So instead, I've now consulted some other Gemini people who are making good power with their Geminis, and they've run this instead, which is a Teflon braid. It's actually a stainless steel and a fabric braid and Teflon. There's 2 of them, a send and a return, and now it's going to work.
I had originally planned to run a deadhead system, which means only one fuel line to the front, and the pressure regulation done at the back of the car. Now that I've changed to running smaller lines, I can fit 2, which means I can run a feed and return and stick my pressure regulator up the front. With a boost reference from that mad intake manifold, this will increase the fuel pressure as boost rises, making tuning a little bit simpler. While I sort that out, Dave is making big progress on wiring, with the engine harness wrapped, terminated and ready to be installed.
So this work of art by my good friend Davo is now going in for the last time. There's only a little bit of plumbing to do now, a little bit of fuel system, catch can, and then I've got a welder fitting in on here, and then the bay's looking more or less done. I've got some ignition leads coming, which I have to make from scratch because you can't get ones that are that exact size. I've got to wrap the dump pipe,
all little jobs, and then plumb the radiator. So there's probably still 2 or 3 days of work in it, even though it's starting to look pretty complete. Most of the fuel system in the front of the car is done. I've also run the AN lines from front to back. Next, we get to put the epic fuel tank that we got in. It's got the hanger. Here's the pump I'm going to use. I think that's like a 460 litres per hour genuine TO automotive pump from Raceworks. That's going to go into here. You can put 2 other pumps if you want to, and we just got to add wires if you want to do that later on. But for now, 1 pump will be more than sufficient for what I'm going for. That's going to go in there. That's going to go in the tank. The tank's going to go in the car, and the fuel system will be fully plumbed.
Thanks to the clever design of this tank, it uses the original mounting points and bolts. The original washer bottle is going in the bin because it's cracked and gross and will be replaced with an aftermarket one that just needs a bracket made up for it. The old bonnet stay is also going into a purity box, and instead this neat gas strut system will stop the bonnet falling on my head. Now that the fuel lines have been run, I can install the Dash 6 AN fittings onto the Plasma Man fuel rail, and once the tank is bolted in and wired in and filled with juice, I'll be able to test everything for any leaks.
Davo, the engine loom is done. Now we're moving on to the body. What do we have to do to hybrid old and new loom into old car?
I am transitioning a lot of the old loom because it used to run down 2 sides of the car. I'm now trying to run it all through 1 side of the car and then inverse that wiring because it'll all be backwards to make it then fit to everything that we have. I don't want to do I don't want to redo any of the wiper circuit because it works really, really well and it hurts my head whenever I have to delve into it. It's complicated and I don't want to know about it. Yep. Hazard switch is another one. I don't want to know about it.
Good.
But I'll do all the lights, blinkers, horns, everything with brand new wire. So I'm stripping out the headlights and stuff like that at the moment because it's going to be too hard to make it all work with what we have. So brand new everything towards the front of the car, and then I'm just getting rid of old regulators, voltage regulators, grounds that were just littered like all over the panel, and just condensing them all into one neat ground.
Cool. Shrinking
all the wire sizes down a little bit. It should just work.
And then plug in.
Yeah.
So engine loom down passenger side, this loom down driver's side.
Yes.
Plug it all in.
Yes.
Connect it up, give it some power.
And then I'll marry all the new wires to the old wires. We'll do a bit of testing with the power probe.
Yep.
Just to make sure we get everything matching.
Brakes, lights, hazard, horns, blinkers.
And we'll bring in all those crazy boxes inside the car.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And the whole thing should just disappear, which is awesome.
A lot of these old boxes may still end up in the bin, depending on how many inputs and outputs we end up with on both our ECU, PDM and Dash. I also ordered some aftermarket carpet, which in my experience can be notoriously difficult to fit. With that in mind, I decided to ask Brad to show me how it's done properly.
Next step on the Gemini journey is the interior. Now, luckily for me, there's a lot of people in the Gemini world who have Geminis, love Geminis, and are also very skilled. And one of those people is Brad. This is Brad. Brad is old school Gemini guy like me, but also an excellent trimmer, and he's offered his help to come and help get the carpet in. He also has done a bunch of work with the headlining and all this sort of stuff as well. Brad, what do we do with the carpet? How does this now work? What do we do?
First things first, what we want to do, we want to sort of lay the moulded carpet in the car to sort of see what areas need building up.
Yep.
And to check our clearances, gaps, make sure the carpet's a good fit from the supplier to begin with.
And then we're going to put underlay as well, right?
Absolutely. Underlay will go on top of the sound deadener that's already been laid in. and then I will be gluing the underfelt to the bottom of the carpet, the moulded carpet, so that if the carpet has to come up for whatever reason at a later stage, the underfelt will come with it.
Oh, cool. Okay, that stops it like moving around. As
It'll
well.
stop moving around. A lot of people in the past used to glue the underfelt directly to the floor pans, and the problem with that, if it does get wet, it makes it near impossible to pull up and dry out. So I will be gluing it to the bottom of your carpet.
Last question: should we bring Sex Spec back?
It's a very big discussion, that one. It's probably a conversation for another day.
Because some of the trimming, dude, during Sex Spec era was freaking phenomenal, and I know that's like where you started out.
It is.
So now it's all clean and nice, but it's not as wild as it was.
Yeah, I sort of started the apprenticeship it sort of in the peak of Sex Spec.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were being done a lot cheaper than what they'd probably cost today. So to sort of bring Sex Spec back, there is hourly rates. Custom work is undefined sort of thing, and people just aren't spending the money with the cost of living, cost of interest rates and everything.
Yeah.
People aren't spending the money they were spending back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I just, as much as I think there is still a market and
a need for next level, like people want next level.
there is an area for Sex Spec to sort of still survive. I just don't think the market's there. I don't think people have the financial backing to build the cars. They haven't got the originality that some of the pioneers had back in the day.
But the skills remain, and today we're using them on this car.
I realised while watching Brad work that his attention to detail is what sets him apart. Methodically and carefully, he'd measure, remeasure, and then cut only when he was sure it was right. The complex curves and folds in the floor pan didn't seem to faze him as he expertly chopped up the moulded carpet. The front and rear pieces come separately, so for now we're going to finish the back section and then come back and do the front once all the wiring is completely finished and out of the way. He's using the insulation to build up the floor pan level so you don't feel any lumps or bumps under your feet. I've got myself a Lithium-Max battery which I'm going to mount in the boot. I had some good success with this style of battery in the Lavorg, and the weight saving is pretty extraordinary, over 12 kilos lighter. That will increase my pizza carrying capacity pretty significantly. The battery comes with a mount that I've installed onto the boot, and Dave will wire everything back to it. The intake manifold I got from Plasma Man comes with a water pipe that needs to be joined to the top of the radiator. I can't seem to get a hose with the right bends to suit my KE70 Corolla radiator, so instead I'm going to make a pipe out of aluminium and I'll join it with straight hose instead.
While Dave is completing the wiring inside the car so we can start it, I have a few jobs to do because it's not starting without spark. These are ignition leads, old school. I'm used to just having cars with coil on plug coils. In our case, the coils are up here on the firewall. They're Haltech ones. Basically, I've got to make these so they go from the spark plug down in there and then run across to there. But you actually make them and put the ends on. So that's one job I've got to do. Also got radiator things to do to get the pipe from the intake manifold into the top hose, and then also the bottom hose needs some clamps on it. Then I think we're done with water. We're going to get spark going, and I'm just helping Dave until we are ready to crank it and start it, which is the aim. It's happening in this episode.
Although it might look roomy in this engine bay, there are a lot of essential parts that are all now fighting for space. The old 1.6 litre carby engine didn't need quite as much stuff to make it work, and the turbo hanging off the side definitely complicates things. I've got this overflow tank for the radiator which will fit snugly up front, and with it plumbed in I can fill the radiator with some Castrol green coolant concentrate mixed 50-50 with water. If nothing drips out, then it is a good day.
So most of the wiring and plumbing is now done. Very happily, I filled it up with coolant and nothing's leaking out of it, which, considering how much of this cooling system I welded, that's an absolute miracle. Dave's wiring in the engine bay is pretty much done. He's just got to run a wire for the alternator and the starter motor, which are the big ones. All the coil wiring is done. Now, you might notice that there's no way currently for spark to get from the coils to the plugs. That's because I ordered the wrong kind of spark plug leads. So I have to make some. So they're on order and they'll be here in a day or two. So that's the last little bit we've got to do before we start it. We're still starting at this episode, even though this episode won't be today. It'll be tomorrow
or the next day, whenever the spark plug leads get here. But in the engine bay, we're looking pretty done actually. So now most of the work will move on to the inside of the car and the boot, where Dave is organising wiring for the battery, a couple of relays, fuel tank, and make that all nice and neat. And then the loom inside the car, which is actually the most complicated bit to get the blinkers and the lights and the heater box and all the stuff that's originally in the car working. We're making some excellent progress.
Some run-in oil is going into the engine, which I will change when we're on the dyno. Then the next job is the spark plug leads, which I actually had to do twice because the first kit I got had the wrong terminals in it. Dave has now got to get the starter hooked up, which means I need to get us some fuel to fill the tank so I can check the whole fuel system for leaks.
The fuel is going in. There is so much stuff that could not work. The fuel pump could not be aligned properly. The hoses could be backwards. The wires could be backwards. Everything has been messed with. Everything. But we're going to try and start it anyway. Okay, we're going to turn the key for the first time and prime it. This is where I'm looking for any fuel leaks. The pump is hopefully going to pump and it's going to make its way to the front of the car without dripping out. Yeah, bit of that. You ready, Davo?
Yeah, man. when you guys are finished.
Let's go, when we're finished. All right, let's go.
All right, ready?
Not really.
Well,
I think that's a good sound.
It was a good sound. Yeah.
Do you have a laptop open yet?
No.
Okay, because we do have a fuel pressure sensor.
Oh, good.
Do you want to go again? Yeah, man. Just check if anything drips out now, right? One more time. That sounds okay.
And no tinkle.
No what?
No tinkle.
No tinkling.
So,
good. Tick. On we go.
Good so far. All right, we'll check for fuel pressure. See if it actually gets fuel pressure.
Yeah.
And at first, it didn't get fuel pressure because I had my feed and return hoses backwards. They look the same, but I should have checked. With a quick swap, we can use the GFB fuel pressure regulator to set the base pressure, which we can see on the Haltech thanks to our sensor. Next, some gear oil is going in, which is actually automatic transmission fluid, and an easy way to get it in is through the shifter hole.
Time to crank it. We've got fuel. No idea what's going to happen. Cross your fingers, everybody. Cross them. Are they crossed? They need to be. Do it. Exactly like that.
Oh, wasn't it going to crank?
Oh, were you waiting for me?
Yeah.
To crank it that whole time?
No, crank it whenever you want.
No, but only crank it when Martin's and my tips touch.
Well, they did. It's like that's giving the universe permission for the...
No, but if we do it again and Dave hits the button as we touch the tips.
Okay. Yep.
3, 2...
Well, you got RPM.
That's good.
So that's something.
I'm surprised.
I forgot to turn the injectors off. So that's also another...
Can you please turn the injectors off?
Oh, I'm going to turn the injectors off.
Not to run yet.
Now. Well, it's not going to run. The timing's wrong.
Oh.
That's probably why it sort of just went, nope.
Oh, okay. We've put a massive earth strap between the chassis and the body. Yes, our battery is in the boot, and it's not huge, so it's a big ask to make it crank and crank and crank. So we just want to crank it one more time and see if it sounds a bit happier. Cross your fingers again. 3, 2, 1, go, Davo. It sounds better.
It sounds so much better.
Why does the timing sound funny, though?
Because it is.
Oh, okay.
Because I forgot to turn the injectors off.
Again?
No, before.
Oh.
This is it trying to get rid of it.
Okay, got it.
But it's advanced. So I'll get my timing light.
Get timing light, let's do it.
The engine has position sensors that tell the Haltech where the pistons are in their stroke. This has to be aligned and set so that the fuel is sprayed and the spark is lit at exactly the right time. If you get it wrong, the engine will backfire, carry on, or just not run at all. So it's important to check it with a timing light.
But I kind of don't want to run it, because if it's broken, then I have to
All
know
right,
that
well,
now.
I'll pack up and we'll come back tomorrow, man.
No, what are you talking about?
No, it's all
No,
good.
we've got to make it run.
Oh,
Should we
okay.
make it run? Dave, we're making it run?
Yeah.
Ask Rob. He
Hey,
came
Rob.
all the way from Japan to see this, because he saw the car running the last time it ran. and literally pulled the engine out, which is why I have no engine.
That is full circle, isn't it?
It's massive full circle. That was 2018.
Full rebirth. This is,
All right.
this is Neo.
Are we starting it or not?
Yeah. Turn the fuel injectors on, please.
Oh, God.
I don't know what I've set the fuel injectors up as. I don't know what they are.
Oh, look.
No, I probably should do a bit more work on this, actually.
Yeah, all right. Do
rather
that.
than just throw a haymaker.
We'll pull the feet off the turbo. We want to see oil come out of here. That means there's oil pressure, means the pump is working, and we'll see it on the gauge as well. The second we see oil come out of here, that goes back on the turbo to make sure that's getting plenty of oil. And then when the oil pressure actually starts to really climb quickly, we're good and we can try and start it. Here we go. Ready, Davo? Mm-hmm. 3, 2, 1. Nothing. No oil pressure.
I reckon it's the air pressure it's seeing.
All we can do is keep trying. I spoke to Darren, who assembled the engine. He said, sometimes it takes time, just keep going. Like, okay, mate, if you say so. 3, 2, 1. Ready, Davo?
Yep.
Tell me if we get any pressure at all.
Yep, ready?
Here we go.
Yes.
How much?
37.
37?
Yeah.
It's got it.
Just straight away.
Oh, look. Oh, yes. Successful dribble. That's all anyone wants, a successful dribble.
Yep. Just needed one more.
Got oil pressure. Dave has enabled the injectors. He's just made a map to try and get it to start and idle. Again, let's do it.
Yep. Okay.
Go.
Alrighty.
Just like that.
I'll just change the fueling and then we'll go again.
The Gemini lives. It lives. And just sounds good. It sounds really good, actually, doesn't it? Ah, genuinely stoked. Look at that.
Just hold on just one little horse minute.
Yeah.
A horse minute
Yeah.
is like an extra powered minute.
So it's been a couple of weeks since you saw the car. And in that time, stuff has happened. Miles came, we did some work on the dash. Dave came back, we did a bit more work thing. We fine-tuned it, Scott Wi-Fi'd it, all that sort of stuff. It takes a lot of time, so that's why I had the little break, so I could like do it all, show you a bit of what's going on. That was all good.
And now it's broken.
The dyno is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's currently 4 p.m. So, yesterday, I was moving it and we're Wi-Fiing it and whatever, and I was putting the speed sensor in it and we had speed signals, so great. That was the last thing before I could drive it on the road. I got a permit so I could drive it to the dyno. That's all good. And when I put it in neutral and started up, this happened. So that noise at first I thought was a busted engine, because Subaru Life, that's what they sound like when they're broken.
That would have been
donk,
worse.
Donk, 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 donk. I can hear a noise. The gearbox we got pulled out of some paddock somewhere in the middle of New South Wales, because Gemini parts there's not that many of them and they're old, right? So the gearbox was a bit of an unknown. Should we have rebuilt it? Probably, but we were told it's good. So anyway, gearbox, it appears, is munted. So it will still move under its own power, but it makes the most horrific noise and probably means the input shaft is completely cactus on it. So that has come out. So after that happened, I drove an hour and a half southwest and picked up another gearbox off a complete legend that I met off the internet, who's a Gemini person. And he got me his best one that he said, I'm pretty sure this one's good, but same again, it's a 40-year-old part. And so that's what I have here to put in now. So the plan is to whack that gearbox in and hope that by the end of tonight it's running and working so that tomorrow you can take it to the dyno. Well, you're going to see the dyno anyway, but it might not actually be tomorrow when it happens.
Hey Martin.
Yeah.
What if the new gearbox goes in and it just does it again?
Then it keeps getting gearboxes till it works. It does.
But maybe it's not that.
No.
Maybe the gearbox is a symptom of something else.
No, I don't reckon. I'm pretty sure it's just an old unknown gearbox. And it's not even making big power yet. The gearbox, and the elephant in the room is, can you put a bigger gearbox in it? You can put gearboxes out of like a Radiator, so a truck, but it requires a lot of mods with shifters and other things to make work, and also diff ratio change. I don't have a diff to change the ratio, so that's a bigger thing. For now, those boxes can support power, and they will unless you put slicks on the back and try and drag race it, then you'll blow gearboxes. That's the way it usually goes with these. So I'm gonna put a standard 5-speed box in it, take it to the dyno, and attempt to make some power.
All the fluids that got spilt while assembling come back to haunt you at first start, but luckily that soon subsides and we can move on to finishing the wiring of the dash as well as some of the interior. Getting the engine running and working wiring-wise is pretty straightforward with Dave's skills. Making the rest of the car work will require a power distribution module, in this case a Haltech PD16. Think of it as a programmable smart fuse box. All our controls go into it and it tells the headlights, wipers, brake lights, blinkers and everything else what to do. It requires quite a bit of wiring, but it actually ends up being less than the factory loom, and as a bonus, it's all brand new. I've decided to ditch the factory instrument cluster and go with the Haltech UC10 digital display. It's customizable and can show us data from all of the sensors that we've installed, as well as replicate all the factory functions. Programming a PDM can be tricky, and sometimes you do get your wires crossed.
There you go. Does that mean it works?
I think the horn's working.
The horn works. We've got to turn it off in here, right?
The switch might be inverted.
Ah, yeah, okay,
it just
cool.
might be back to front.
That's so funny. Horn.
That's a good trick.
That's a good sign.
At least.
It's a really good trick to find someone. Horn, wiring, override switch.
Just turn the whole thing off. We know.
Turn the horn off?
I think so.
Yeah, cool.
Just disassign the wire.
Or just turn generic output 1 off.
Just turn it off.
Done.
That was good.
What else? Something else turned on too. The wipers.
Oh, I have no idea what turned on.
Everything turned on. Oh man, it's alive.
I'll just go change my pants. I'll be back.
My mate Brad is back with his magical trimming skills to get the front carpet in place, and while that's happening, Miles from Flux 3D has worked his magic on a surround that will mount the UC10 into the dash. With some clever 3D scanning, modelling and then printing, we've got ourselves a test unit to fit into the Gemini. It fits perfectly and will do a great job of holding everything in place. Next I have to sort out this noisy gearbox, and luckily for me they are small and light in this car, and being old, the access is pretty good too. Before too long I've got the old one out and all the reusable bits can be transferred across to the new one, which can then be slotted into place with the help of a gearbox jack.
So this is a cool little part that I managed to get off the internet. This was $19. That is a speed sensor from a Radiator, and also is used on a bunch of Isuzu vehicles that we didn't get in Australia and I think you guys got in America. So this goes on the end of the gearbox where the speedo cable normally goes, because it's an old school cable drive system that goes from there up to the dash. Now our dash is gone because we've got a Haltech UC10 in it, but we need a speed sensor, and what's great about this is it bolts directly in to there, clicks in, screws on, and then it's just a simple matter of plugging that in and bang, you can calibrate that on the Haltech. I've already done it with a GPS, but we can now do it on the dyno to confirm it's exactly 100% correct. And there you go, speed signal. And anyone who has messed with putting new ECUs in old cars knows that's a massive hassle, but not with this. So good. All right, it's got a new gearbox. Let's see if it'll move under its own power. First gear, clutch out, yeah! We're going to the dyno tomorrow, people. Let's go.
Alright, this is it. Months of work, parts from all over Australia and the world, heaps of favours from mates, some I've managed to pay back with pizza and some I'll be paying back forever. But I am excited to see what this mad old car can do on the dyno. It's got an excellent modern turbo, a built engine and some of the best ECU hardware you can get. And of course the hopes and dreams of this Gemini fanboy from way back. All sounds good, right? But straight away, there's a problem.
You know what, this car hasn't done much fighting until now. Until the gearbox blew up and I had to change that. and now until the alternator's fighting. So change to a new alternator just to make sure, because it's dyno day and I only got the permit for today. So today is the day. We got here, still charged high on the way. Started low, but then came up high again. So the alternator is not being controlled properly. We think it might just be a basic wiring thing of flipping some wires. So that's what we're trying to do. But the connector then just fell apart and it's in a really annoying spot right next to a hot turbo manifold. So it's fighting. It's just like the old days, except I used to be in the Gemini and now I'm outside the Gemini because the Gemini doesn't work. But we're going to have some lunch. Always fuel the people that are helping you. Don't let them get hungry. It never ends well. All right, let's see.
After some sustenance and a rethink, we reckon we may have worked out what's going wrong. The alternator is not happy and not charging, but with some wire rerouting, we at least have a stable battery voltage, enough to get the car moving on the dyno and try and make some progress.
After a few somewhat stressful false starts, the Gemini has now completed more than a kilometre of driving on the dyno. So this still has run-in oil in it, so we were basically running it in on the dyno. It's done a bit of driving as well, so I'm confident that's all good. So now we're going to dump the oil and put proper oil in it, that it's going to remain in there, and then we're going to tune it. And what does that look like on this?
Well, mate, it's a nice combo. Now, it feels really revvy. Everything is sort of doing the right thing, so it's staying at the right coolant temperature. The oil temp and the oil pressure look really good. Like you said, we've had it on the dyno. You've been driving on the road a bit to kind of bed it.
Yep.
I've just held it at a whole bunch of different loads on the dyno, so steady state, but holding into it to get a whole bunch of cylinder pressure, so it'll push those rings out and really make sure that that bore to piston ring is all bed in. Bottom end wise, as far as running something in, you're running it out, you're not running it in.
Yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
It's turned, it's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, after we've given it a nice workout on the dyno, time to drop the oil out of it, and then I got some pretty high hopes. It's got all of the good gear. It's starting nice. It sounds really zingy. It sounds beautiful.
It's worth mentioning as well, I know you've seen a broken gearbox and change a gearbox. Why aren't I putting a big gearbox or a built gearbox? There's not much room in there. Hey, these are small cars. You don't have these massive cavernous engine bays and tunnels where you can put big, sequential transmissions and stuff. It is possible, but in a stock street car, not really. So the box that's gone in, it seems like it's shorter ratio. I think it might be a diesel box. It's supposed to be. And if it is, that's a good thing because they are strong. And the rest of the driveline is also the same as a diesel Gemini because the Japanese ones had bigger tail shaft, bigger drive shaft. But the question mark is still over whether the driveline will handle being pushed on the dyno. But the engine, I think, should be okay. And all the supporting mods are there. Or we might run out of fuel pump. Like, I don't know now. This is now the unknown.
Oh, do we put bets down on where is it going to run
out? No, I never do this with you because you're choosing.
Yeah, that's probably the truth on this whole combo, though. It's got some fuel system in it.
Yeah.
It's got pump. It's got injectors. It's got that beautiful inlet. It's got enough throttle body. It's got enough intercooler.
Turbo's decent.
It's got enough turbo. I think we need to be a bit responsible with what type of car it is. Is going to be where the power limit's going to be.
Absolutely.
But beautiful, very, very, very capable setup.
All right. Well, let's do it. We're going to dump the oil, chuck it back in the dyno, and then it's all Scotty, and we just cross our fingers and see what happens. Let's go. Tips when you're changing oil. For the first time in this case, we've had running in oil in there. While it did all its first start, we've given it a hard time on the dyno. We have done everything we need to do to break the engine in, but now we're going to put the engine oil that's staying in there. Castrol Edge 1060, we use it in all our cars. The most important tip when you're changing your oil is to make sure when it has this foil thing, is that you make it a smiley face. So you put two eyes and a mouth. There you go. And then you pour it into your car. See, look at that. Perfect. Just kidding, you should probably just rip that off and then it pours properly. It's game time. This is where you spank it on its butt and send it on its way. Dave's got to go because he has other cars to wire up now that this one's done. Scotty is going to get on the laptop. He's going to punch some numbers into this thing. We're going to see what power it makes. We're going to see if anything blows up. This is it, people. Cross your fingers. A couple of power runs coming right up. Okay, Scotty is happy with all the setup. Now we fire it up, we do some runs, and we cross our fingers. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. It's been a long time coming. Let's go.
Good on you. All right, here we go.
That started. Cool. Let's go home. End the video.
It's always a good sign. I put extra straps on it already. You know how I normally, I normally do one strap. You know the.
Yeah.
So she's got 2 straps. Turn that rear fan on, or turn that front one on, and just do a bit of steady state stuff, and just start to sneak up on it. Wow, that turbo.
It wants to boogie, doesn't it?
It's coming on, eh?
It wants to boogie.
All right, just going to flatten all this off just a little bit.
I'm just watching the boost gauge go like that straight away.
Good sizing.
Yeah.
So I've just pulled 4% of the fuel out of it.
10 pounds on the spring, yeah?
Beautiful.
It should have a 10-pound spring in it.
Effortless, eh?
Well,
Loves it.
It does sound old though. It's a bit do you think it sounds a bit clattery and like compared to like a modern engine?
I like it, eh?
You like it, yeah.
I do. You know, I like these style of engines.
Sitting in that seat.
Right, what do we do now?
You do gate pressure run without too much timing in it.
All right. Oh yeah. How much? So I've kind of guessed an ignition map in it. So how much timing should I pull out of it to be feel pretty comfortable?
2 or 4.
Let's go 4.
4, then bring the 2 back, and then the 2 back, right?
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. See, I'm learning. So are you guys, sort of slowly.
I know that it's going to be fine, and the reason why is just then I've just pulled your 4 out that you wanted out.
Oh, you did already.
And I can hear it already to think. So
you can hear that it's not happy
straight away now. It's not happy.
It wants more.
It wants more for sure. But the shape of it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to do before we do this?
Engine safety stuff.
Please.
You've done that. No, we don't want boost in it yet.
No.
Cross my fingers. Okay.
Nice slow one. I'm not even going to hold it wide open on the pedal either, just because I just want to make sure that the car part of it also happy and feels good.
Yeah.
So we're more going for road speed at the moment. Here we go. About 50% throttle. Let it rip.
Yep.
Felt good, so I just kept pushing the throttle. It's good power.
172 kilowatts, 230 horsepower on gate pressure. It's going into the 200s without question. And then keeping it out of the 300s, it's more of a choice, I reckon.
Happy?
Yep.
The car feels good as well, nice and smooth in the rear end.
Yeah.
All right, so the first thing, perfect diagonal line, so no clutch slipping, no weird stuff
Clutch,
there.
tick.
We made 172 kilowatts, 230 horsepower at the top, but see the shape of that curve, how we were...
It's nice.
Like this.
Yeah.
RPMs like this. We've hit that rev limiter pretty hard at $7,000. So but this camshaft of this engine is saying...
Oh, you think?
The torque's not rolling over, nothing's happening. It wants to keep going.
Yep.
So
we might bump that slightly. I think we spoke about, between 72 and 7500s probably, because it is still an old single cam thing, right?
Yeah.
But you can rev them if you build them right.
So I'm going to suggest that we'll probably end up bringing it higher.
Okay.
Because I think it's better, like the engine builder will know more about this than I do.
Yeah.
But it's going to be better to allow the thing to rev rather than bounce it off a limiter that it doesn't want to be at.
Yeah.
Because you'll be driving this and naturally hit that limiter and then, I've got to shift gear because if it's making power and pulling, you don't typically change the gear.
Sure.
What do we do now?
Well, you can throw timing at it or boost at it, but probably timing next, right?
What if we do we'll do the timing first and we'll get happy on our boost pressure.
Oh, so if you do the same run, same boost pressure, 2 degrees of timing, no difference?
Spot on.
Probably good.
Because I don't want to do heaps of things at once because I won't know what made the difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call that 12 pounds because up the top there...
I did see it creep over the 10, yeah.
Feels like it's got 12 pounds is kind of what it wants to have everywhere there. Comes on bloody good, where she's got 4 pounds at $3,000.
Okay. I would say that the turbo is a bit big.
Yeah.
You could put a smaller one on, but it's a built engine. You want to let it sing, put the boost in at the top and have a good time, right?
Mate, it's got a lot of boost and a lot of horsepower for a really long time.
Yeah, great.
On the graph here, we've got 100 kilowatts from 4-ish thousand onwards, so pretty healthy. That's a real good setup.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how experienced you are on the road or as a dyno tuner or on a dyno, you can't be looking at everything at the same time. So I've already set up all the engine protections and they are a little bit tight at the moment.
Yeah.
So if we're running it up, all I want to look at is the mixtures and the power and the torque to make sure we're making gains. I don't want to waste runs and be revving the shit out of it if I've done something wrong and we're not going to get a gain. So I'm looking at that. Meanwhile, the software is looking at all the pressures, all the temps.
Yeah, it's great.
It's going to bring the limiter in, and I don't have to worry about that.
So it's like there's 10 tuners sitting in the back with their own laptops.
All it is. I just don't have to worry about every part of it anymore. I do have to worry when those engine protections turn on, though.
All right, run number 2. Let's go.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Logging's on, wide open this time. Go. A little bit of heat soak. As I was part throttling it, walking into it, I'm only at say 40 or 50% throttle, but it's enough airflow.
Yeah,
it's the same as wide open anyway.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty good.
It is what it
that
is.
That tells you it's efficient. The intake and everything is working.
Yeah.
No restrictions.
Yep, spot on. On idle, it's got about 10, 12, 14 degrees of timing. As an aspirated motor, it would have about 24 degrees is kind of the total number that you would call it.
Yeah.
And on 10 pounds, it's got roughly 14 to 16 degrees depending on what load it's on.
Did you turn it off?
And that's the end of that.
All right, it's dead.
We ran out of volts.
So our alternator might still be haunting us because if it's still not charging properly, and the lithium does want a fair bit of voltage to push the power back into it, like there's a good chance that the last few runs were just being run completely off the battery, but we didn't know because the numbers look so healthy. So if that's the case, I do have a spare. So if we need to, we'll chuck another battery at it, or we'll sort out an alternator, or probably both. What was the voltage sitting at generally? Was it telling you?
It was really good. So a lithium battery is going to sit at 13.3 until it gets to 20% full.
Yeah.
And then it'll go from 13.3.
Like a drill battery.
Yeah, exactly the same.
So maybe the alternator wasn't giving it any love.
I reckon the alternator's got nothing.
Yeah.
So that last pull went from 12 down to 11.6, and I think we'll find that 11.6 is probably 0% in a lithium.
While we try and work out exactly why our alternator won't play ball, we're going to recharge the battery, and then to prevent burns from the heat of the engine, we're going to put some rags down and recheck our alternator wiring to see if we can work out why it won't charge. No power means no tune, and it means going home without a number. So the issue we're having is alternator control. Pretty much all alternators have some element of control. Now the real old school way is just basically, you've got that battery light on your dash. That little globe is actually the load and it's going to the alternator, which is why when your alternator dies, that will come on. Same with batteries and stuff like that. Ours is a bit more advanced. We're triggering it from our ECU. We can duty cycle it and do all sorts of things to control it. But because the alternator is off a Nissan Patrol, we're not 100% sure. We have diagrams, but it doesn't mean necessarily they're right because there's all different models and variants. We think maybe just the control wire and the wire that the alternator basically measures the battery voltage from potentially is just backwards. So all we can really do is flip it. If we have it one way, it overcharges. If we have it another way, we get no charge and it dies, which is what it did. So now just trying our third option of basically flipping them and see what happens. There is always the possibility that the alternator was faulty when it went onto the car, but at that point it did output a healthy voltage when it first started. So it could be heat affected or our triggering could be incorrect. Either way, we still don't have a solution. So the problem's a little bit annoying. It's like we can either have 15 point something volts or no volts. And then it's just the battery running the whole car, which it will do for half an hour, but that's not sustainable. So running your whole car at 15 volts is not great. Like these are 12 volt systems, that's what they're meant for. You could probably do it for an amount of time, but it does generate more heat
The alternator's going to get pissed off. The battery probably won't love it either. Actually, the battery will probably absorb that for a long time, okay, being modern, but it's not ideal. So we have to work out why we can't just get our normal 13.5 to 14.5 volts from the alternator. Could be a weird thing to do with this particular Patrol alternator that we've got. Could be something to do with our setup, but either way, we can't leave it like that because we'll just keep killing batteries.
After a few more tests, it's clear that our alternator is not going to work, which means we need to find another one. There's none locally available, which means the dyno session is over, until Scott comes up with a novel approach to keep power flowing into our Gemini, and it comes courtesy of Toyota's finest straight 6. That's right, the test engine they use for demonstrations and development has a working alternator. We just have to use jumper leads to get it into our car so our day is not over.
We cannot get our alternator to work. We can't get it to charge. We can't run the car for too long with just a battery. So what we have next to us here is a 2JZ. The 2JZ is going to be supplying battery power for the Gemini. I know it's crazy. It means I can't drive it home, but it doesn't matter. What we want to do is not waste any more of Scotty's time, get this thing tuned, get a number, make sure the tuner's happy, and then I'll fix the alternator later, put it on, and drive it back. Let's go. That's fun, man.
Beautiful. This is also proving that the grounding in the car, things are working. There's no problem with the chassis back to the alternator, nothing like that.
Yeah, right.
How smooth is it?
I know, it's great. I did not expect it to be that smooth.
Oh, look at the target, look at the actuals. Oh. Oh. There's certainly a reward in that. It makes me feel so good.
It wants to make boost, doesn't it?
Good turbo. Good turbo.
Good turbo, good manifold, and wastegate priority inside that rear housing must be good. Cool, consistent.
Truthfully, you could probably still rev it, but you can see there how that looks a whole lot better than limiting earlier on.
Yeah.
Let's just bring that one up.
That's a nice looking curve anyway. That's going to drive nicely on the road, you can tell.
Okay, so that's those last 2 runs.
Yeah, cool. And that's everything's just a bit cooler and not as heat soaked.
Yeah. So, I think on this thing we're going to go 3 pounds at a time.
Yep.
That was 12 or 13 pounds this run. Hopefully it's going to be about 16 pounds.
Okay, cool. Run number 4, we've added boost. Let's go. Going. 188 kilowatts, 253 horsepower. That's a lot for a Gemini, people. I know that might not sound like a lot for like a K-swap turbo something, but like in a Gemini, that's huge. Nice. 195 kilowatts, a little bit extra timing and cleaning up the boost curve.
So that's still got 16 pounds, so no change.
Wow, and 16 pounds, a little bit extra timing. Very good.
It's got good fuel system, good injectors, really good engine. Like this is the bit where it just works. Boost is coming on real hard now.
Great.
Up straight to the target and then just sitting flat.
Yep.
It's a little bit, 15.7, 15, you know what, the scale is so small that...
Inconsequential.
Yeah.
That is actually a really good number for a Gemini too, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Like if you were going to daily it and not be scared of it, I reckon 200's a sweet spot. I mean, think about an S15 with 200 kilowatts.
Yeah.
A 180 with 200 kilowatts. Like
this is a smaller, lighter, more dangerous car to drive.
Weighs 1 ton.
I love it.
You know, you've got a a quarter of a ton advantage over a sports car like that. So it's, I mean, we're already in like such a good spot. Now it's just for the science of seeing what the motors and turbo and everything wants to do. But realistically, that would be daily mode.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll keep that in mind, that can be the one
Party
of the boost
mode,
levels.
different thing. Racetrack, open space, go for it. But on the street, that's about where you want to be. That's so good. 211, 284 horsepower.
Alright, so that's where,
Very cool.
That's about where we are, 19 pounds.
Amazing.
So we've got 19 pounds, 210 kilowatts. You got a, I don't know, S15 or something like that.
Oh, this will rip. That'll do like an 11. If you had the right tyre on it, you're in the 11s all day.
Alright, so from here, what do we do?
You go home or you put ethanol in it. That's the only two choices.
Do you want to go further on petrol, or are you thinking that?
No, not really. I mean, you just screw more boost into it, right?
Yeah.
What for?
Because it's responding well and because we can, but I do agree with you that you've kind of got to reach that happy limit where you can go and beat on this all day long and it's going to love it.
Yeah.
Everything's coming up really nice compared to we can pump this out and go across to ethanol.
What do you do on your? What would you do on your car if this was a Dado?
So I'm probably similar to you, which is not the popular opinion, that about 200 kilowatts in this car and having access to petrol to be driving it on.
Yes, anywhere.
No hassle, no mucking around. And 200 kilowatts, like you said, it is a 11 or 12 second car.
Yeah.
Then, and it's extremely safe. We'll flick it over to ethanol. We'll put more boost in it until it runs out of fuel system.
Or driveline.
Or driveline.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a pretty reasonable thing to do and a good way to run this car.
Cool.
Although the Gemini fought us, I consider it a great success. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate we had to use 2JZ to keep the thing running, but that was also very creative and it worked.
2JZ power plant down there.
Yeah.
Electricity power plant in this case.
Our alternator.
It has saved us more than once, this thing, and while it's not ideal, it's on the dyno.
Yeah,
we don't have access to that. It's just too complicated. So this is the best use of time. Hey, now you've got unlimited time to go and fix that alternator.
And I have options with that. You can use an N13 Pulsar alternator. I could go back to a Gemini one, although the current's pretty low on those. So I've got things and a plan to fix that, and that's not too bad. But it means I'm not driving it home. I will be towing it back to the shed so we can fix that, and we'll take you along for the ride. But Scotty, that number, that power curve, what are you seeing?
The engine sounds amazing, and like, I get it, bit old, a bit of there's supposed to be a rattly old engine. It sounds $1 million. It sounds so nice, and it's real revvy and clean on the throttle. Like, really well balanced engine, but the whole driveline in the car is dead straight. Like, it feels so smooth and nice, like a brand new car.
And you do feel that on the dyno, don't you? Like unbalanced wheels,
you can
shaft,
tell
tail
straight
shafts.
away how it's going to feel on the road. So it feels brilliant. 211 kilowatts.
On 19 pounds.
We got 19 pounds. It's on petrol. It drives real nice. We're going to have adjustable boost levels, so you're going to be able to make somewhere between about 150-ish kilowatts to 210 kilowatts with different boost levels. I think this turbo doesn't know that it's been working yet.
Has it? We haven't really woken that turbo up, and it is slightly bigger than what you maybe would do if you were only ever going to make this kind of power.
Nice boost curve though on this combo of engine. It comes on and feels fantastic. So with the ratios and with what's happening, this will be a really, really nice drivable thing. And look at that, the big power band as well. So it's making over 150 kilowatts from 4.5 grand to where we're revving it to 7.5.
That's pretty good. And it's worth also remembering that this is, although we put a lot of modern equipment on it, it's still an old engine. So, you know, 20, 30 years ago, making that power on a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder, it was hard work.
So, yeah, comparatively to try and get, say 210, 220 kilowatts out of your SR20, 4G, 63, WRX.
Yes, absolutely.
On 19 pounds, very impressive.
So, in a way, all that intake manifold, exhaust manifold, modern turbo, the modern technology has made it sort of seem like
it's newer than it is.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we put a K24 in here, unopened stock and strapped a turbo to it, those numbers would just keep sailing up, especially if you know, went to ethanol.
Yeah.
And that is something in this we may do as well. We did put a flex sensor in it so that one day we can do ethanol. Not yet. I don't want to go messing with that until I have the car sorted and driving first, because, as you said earlier, petrol anywhere, right?
You could drive this thing anywhere now. And how big this car is, like what does it weigh?
A ton.
So
1 ton.
It's
with you in it, 1 ton.
Pretty at that power level, the thing will be great. You've still got like brakes and drive line stuff.
Yeah, a bit of that to do.
Yeah.
Also just spares, like, you know, we're asking a lot of the gearbox and the diff and all that as well. So I'd like to have a spare thing up my sleeve if we're going to turn the wick up. But for it to get driving and to get it on the road and to break the car, and essentially it's a run-in tune for the car, that is excellent.
Yeah, mate, you've undone a lot of nuts and bolts on this car. So what a nice thing to say, a run-in for the car, not so much the engine, because, mate, she's doing what she should do. It's brilliant.
This is looking good. Coolant temp's perfect, hasn't moved. Fuel pressure's great, oil pressure's great. It makes a bit of boost when you push it. We've got some squeaky dashes, but for a car this old, stripped back to as far as it was, this is a pretty awesome maiden voyage.
Now it's time to do that last 5% and get this thing completely finished.
Now I'm into the nitty-gritty and fine-tuning things on the Gemini. It's hard when the car's been in the shed the whole time to know how it will behave on the road, but luckily there's a thing called a plate brake test. This is a machine that you can essentially drive onto quite slowly, and it has sensors in it, and they move around and help give you an analysis of the brake power, both front and rear, and the balance left to right, stuff like that. It's a really good way of checking your braking system. It's also something you need for engineering and registration when you've got something modified like this. So I've now got to go down the brake rabbit hole. When I tested the car, it passed, but only as okay, and we could see from those numbers that they weren't really where they needed to be. So in order to make it better on the road and safer, I've got to improve those numbers. A brake upgrade is also happening as well, which will give me much bigger front calipers. But in the meantime, what I need to sort out first is my proportioning. So what that means is the amount of power that the front brakes do and the amount of power that the rear brakes do to pull the car up needs to be improved. So on the car, there's one that comes with it. It's already sitting there. For whatever reason, because we have done a bunch of mods, upgrades, changed a whole bunch of things, that proportion is not quite right. The way to fix that is with a proportioning valve. So either one like this, which is non-adjustable, or you can get adjustable proportioning valves as well. People use these on race cars, but you can also use these on cars and then basically take away the adjustable side once you've dialed it in. So my plan is to be able to dial in the correct proportion front to rear. To do that, I'm going to need to make some new lines. Now, this is where all this stuff comes into it. This is stainless line. It's the prettiest by far. It's also the hardest because stainless is hard and quite hard to bend. Most of the time, people use a nickel-coated mild steel, or what they call like Bundy tube, which looks like that. Either way, the size is all the same. It's 3/16. And then you've got these fittings which go over it, and then you've got a bunch of crimping tools that actually create these fittings. That's called a double flare. There's a whole bunch of different types. You need to make sure you do the right one for your car. Then the fittings that go on like that, and you end up with a brake line fitting that looks like that. This will look familiar if you've ever messed around with brake lines, but you can actually make them from scratch, but you have to do them properly. You have to use the right sort of machine. So I do have this tool here, which will make the flaring tool, and we are going to basically delete the factory one, install one, either of these, adjustable, non-adjustable, depending what the engineer wants, and that will improve the braking feel and make sure that the front is doing most of the work, which it needs to, and the back doesn't lock up first, because the worst thing that can happen is the back brakes lock up, they're skidding and they're spinning you around and having a bad time. Even in the Gemini manual from back in the 70s, it pretty much explains that and tells you what the proportioning kind of should be and how it should behave and how to get there. So we can use modern technology and modern crimpers to do that really easily. We bend up a bunch of tube, we use a tube bender to do so, to get all the shapes right, and we delete the factory one and install one of these, and that should make the braking performance way better. Full spaghetti, like a spaghetti brake line, and that is factory. The system is all very impressive, but a lot of the time you end up with this sort of patchwork of stuff. But we're going to modernise and simplify, and that's worked really well for us in the engine bay so far, so we'll continue with the brakes. So what we have to do with our new proportioning valve is now join the dots. So it says here front in, front out, rear out. The reason for that is you've got 2 channels on the front and the rear one is combined. Sometimes they're not combined, but that's the way it works for this particular one, which means this will work perfectly. So now pretty much I have to connect the master cylinder outs here to the top of this for in, and then connect the 3 pipes here, which is front left, front right and rear into the valve, which some of these pipes I may be able to reuse just by bending them a little, and some I will need to remake from scratch.
Brake fluid is a bit nasty and it will eat your paint and dry out your hands, so gloves and plenty of cleaning is a good idea. It's worth mentioning there is no room for error here. The fittings must be perfectly sealed or you're going to have air in the system, which causes a squashy pedal and crappy braking. For one of the lines, I'm using a more portable flaring tool so I can reuse the factory one. It only needs to be a little bit shorter and then it will connect straight into the new valve, saving me a heap of time.
So that job is all done. Basically 1 new brake line and then just adapting the other fittings to fit into the adjustable bias. Now if you get a race car, you'd probably leave it like that because you can tweak it. This is a road car, so that knob and the adjustability needs to be taken away once it's dialed in, but being able to dial it in on the plate brake tester with that is going to be excellent to make sure I have just the right amount of bias between front and rear. So next stop is a plate brake test. Yeah, looks better.
Feels better.
65, 35, dude. Less brake that way. Yeah, Aaron.
Now, while the car passed on the original brakes, when I got talking to the engineer, he said he'd like to see better braking numbers. After some research, I found that Holden Piazza discs and pads would fit the Gemini hardware and mean I wouldn't have to change wheels. Bigger brakes do usually mean a wheel diameter upgrade to fit them. Piazzas, or Isuzu Impulse as they're called elsewhere in the world, come with a 2-litre engine which matches my setup and should provide plenty of stopping power, all using factory parts.
So what held up this brake upgrade from doing it straight away when we were building the car was I couldn't get bits. These are the last blanks that were in the country, and then the guys actually ground the J's into them, I guess that's what it is, or it could be a nose also. And now it looks like a nose, I'll never be able to unsee it. Anyway, this is the original ones as well, Piazza ones. You can actually see there's a very obvious thickness difference, and also the old pads were cooked as well, actually crumbling and coming apart. I couldn't get discs and I couldn't get pads, but it's the best upgrade you can do that fits under this size wheel. If you want to do bigger brakes, which you can do like a Commodore, you've got to go at least a 15-inch wheel, which should be fine, but the 14s look better. So I managed to get some pads. I had to get them out of the USA. And not only was I able to get lots and lots and lots of pads, I think I got every old stock pad that's in all of the United States of America. So I now have like 16 pads, of which I get to pick the best ones. Each pair was $7 each. And shipped here, it was like $60 for more pads than I could ever need. So obviously I'm going to put these up for other Gemini people who might be chasing them as well. But this looks like the best one, good amount of metal in there. The NEC stuff it comes with is completely dried up. Let's chuck them in. Yeah, look at that. 70, 20, 21, 29. Perfection, dude. Bang on. And look how much more force we've got. Thanks, dude. I've jumped through a bunch of hoops and Plates are on. Now, I have had this plate on quite a few of my cars, but most importantly, it was my very first number plate I ever had on my very first car, which happened to be a Gemini just like this. Now, for the last 20 years or so, a guy called Don May has been the CEO of Dominos Australia. He was the one that greenlit this project in the first place, and turns out he used to deliver pizzas in a Gemini back in the 80s. So when he found out it was finished and he found out we're going to go do some deliveries, he said, "Can I come along?" So let's go. All right, Don, for the first time, here it is. Finished.
Look at that. How gorgeous is that?
It turned out so good.
Oh my gosh. How cool.
And so you delivered pizzas in a Gemini?
Yeah, so my first car was a Tirana, but my first delivery car was a Holden Gemini. So I used to drive this bronze sandpiper with a red telephone on the top.
Yeah.
And I drove for 2 years. That car through floods in Deception Bay up in the north of Brisbane, you couldn't kill that car.
And that sandpiper today, should I tell you what it'd be worth today in that condition or not? About 30 grand which is unbelievable, because I got my Gemini, I used to deliver pizzas in for like 2 or 3. I think people forget as well, like back then, because we get on our phones now and you just go order.
Yeah,
back then, like it was dialer thing. But even in the 80s, that was new, right?
Yeah, so for us, Queenslanders, we call them Refurbishing. What was it in New South Wales? UBD or something?
That, UBD.
UBD. As a pizza delivery driver, you had to do area knowledge tests.
Yes.
So you had to know all the main roads and everything, which we don't do now because everyone's got GPS. But so you used to have to be a pizza delivery driver, you had to have an area knowledge test. And then you still had the Refurbishing in Queensland where you would quickly look at which exact house in the street and then you'd just head off, just from memory.
This is, even in my time, this was pre-GPS and there was a giant map.
Yes,
and you had to and then there were some streets that were one ways, and if you went the wrong way, your pizza delivery time would be 5 minutes more, which is a big deal with a hot pizza in the back. You don't want that.
Oh.
You want it hot and fresh, so you got to get a tip.
2 years, literally just driving around, delivering pizzas, and
I liked it.
I loved it.
I liked it because it was like, I'm getting paid, I'm cruising around in my car, I just spent the money I earned anyway back on the car, which means every couple of weeks it would be a bit better.
Yeah.
But you know what, the Domino's I used to deliver for is actually not that far from here, so I thought, why don't we go and check it out? And it's a good reason to go for a cruise.
Oh, I'd love the idea. Yeah,
Shall
it'd
we?
be fantastic. Why not?
Let's do it. All right. You started as a delivery driver.
Yep.
But then did you open your own stores, or how did you get to the point where you were running stuff?
So 2 years as a delivery driver, starting to be a school teacher, worked at Coles, worked at this business Silvio's. Got towards the end of my degree, realised I didn't want to be a school teacher. So I took a manager's job in the store, became a supervisor, operations manager, and a small shareholder then eventually in that little business over about a 6-year period. And then in '93, we bought the Domino's brand in Australia out of its third liquidation. And I came down to Sydney, lived in Sydney between '93 and '95, running the Domino's business, and the founders of Silvio's were in Silvio's. And then in '95 we decided we wanted to become one brand, so we converted the Silvio stores to Domino's. And I went out and became a franchisee up in Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Morayfield, Caboolture, all those sort of areas. And then after 5 years of building 17 stores, I then used the equity in those stores with another franchisee who was from Newcastle. We came in and we bought 20 to 25% of the company, and I became the CEO.
Well, congratulations, because that's a very cool arc. I know everyone will hear that 30-second explanation and go, oh yeah, but that's decades of your life.
March will be 38 years.
Wow.
And now we're in 12 markets, 3,800 stores.
It's impressive.
When I started, we had 15 stores, and that business is 3,800 stores.
How much of that do you attribute to the fact that delivery was a thing? Because, a lot of restaurants, and this is the thing, I know these days you can get everything delivered. I know when I was delivering pizzas, even in the early 2000s, it was considered somewhat novel that, someone would bring you food in a car. Like, that's quite unique.
Yeah, well, people believe that half of all retail will be delivered by 2030. And, we're the leader in QSR delivery, because most people still use third-party delivery. And they're all our drivers, as you know.
And aside from pizza, what does it feel like to see something like that grow? Because I know from our point of view, we started on the driveway, making videos, and now we've able to do something like this, which is better than any car I could have ever imagined owning, when I first started. What's it feel like personally to see that grow? Like, what is it that excites you about seeing the growth?
We employ over about 120,000 people around the world today. And most of them young, most of them started from the shop floor, and it's just amazing what people can do, And as an Australian company, One of the things I'm really proud of is that we bring all of these profits from overseas. A lot of people don't realise that.
Yeah. And so what do you like to drive around in these days? Obviously, it's not a Gemini.
No.
But maybe we need to get you back in one. But yeah, what's your weapon of choice at the moment? What do you like to get around in?
I've got a Brabus.
Oh, cool.
G-Wagon Brabus.
Nice. What is it about it?
It's just raw.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't think I'd like it because I'd been in one and it was a bit rough. And then my wife and my daughter said, oh, you got to get a G-Wagon, they're the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, they are cool.
They hate it. Well, my wife does. My daughter loves it. But I actually love it because it's just so, it's got that fine balance between technology and it's still quite raw.
Yeah. Actually, funny you say that. That's what I feel about this car.
Yeah.
It's an old thing, but all the technology in it is as cutting edge as you can get for aftermarket.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favourite things. Like, it's noisier in here than it would be in a stock Gemini, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Before too long, we're back in my old stomping ground, a huge suburb right in the middle of Sydney, with hundreds of crisscrossing streets, many of which I still remember by name even after all this time.
Here it is. All right, let's go have a look. Haven't been here for a while. My spot was up the back there, washing dishes. Can we go have a look?
Yeah, let's go have a look.
So now we've got the screen for the digital ones, but back then there was a massive map.
Yep.
And you would come here and you would grab the stuff and go, right, how am I going to do it? How am I going to get there?
Yeah, I mean, if you walk around the store and count how many screens, we're in a mode of consolidating screens because we started building, there's screens up here, there's screens here. And it's just because we were bolting on technology and ideas. And then as we go to the next generation, we can start consolidating. But yeah, that's our GPS driver tracker.
That's cool.
So when you went out on the road, the manager never knew when you'll come back.
No. And even mobile phones then was like, calling was expensive.
Yeah.
You call your manager, it was like $5.
Yeah. Good to see you.
How you going, mate? What's going on? I used to work here. I used to work here 20 years ago. This was me back here. I'd be washing up all this stuff as it came out of the oven, cleaning them up, big giant stacks of them on trolleys.
Yeah.
And then when you weren't delivering, that was my job, cleaning up.
This is a 4-minute oven.
Yep.
So our ovens back then we used to cook in 7 minutes 15.
And this is my hack. It's probably not relevant now, but this is my hack, is that when you were like at the end of the shift, if the boss was like, yeah, you can make yourself a staffy one or whatever, then I would put it in, do it the full rack, and then push it back for another 2 minutes, and it would be like so crispy. Probably beyond what it should be, but it was so good.
That was your kind of pizza?
That was my pizza hack, yeah. Just here, just straight back in.
Yeah, we have mixers and sheeters, and literally we make dough at least 6 days a week. We can't use it in the first 12 hours because we're building up some maturity in it.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of people think because Domino's is so prominent and fast, but you see every single pizza's made fresh to order, always fresh dough.
Don, I got a couple of guys at workshops near me that are a bit hungry.
Okay.
And I did mention that we're going to be doing some driving around and going back to Domino's, and they just looked at me and they're like, are you bringing us lunch? And I didn't have a good answer for them, so I thought I'd ask you, are we bringing them lunch?
We're bringing them lunch.
Excellent.
The franchise partner here, he's got to be pretty excited because he hasn't even opened in his normal opening time, and we've already placed a $1,082 order. So. We're feeding all of these guys.
About that.
Yes.
Are you good to? Can you?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. I got that.
I was a bit worried about. I told the boys that I'd bring them some pizza, but I kind of didn't think about the fact it'd be $1,000 worth of pizzas.
Probably could put a coupon on that and reduce it a little bit.
Just look for my coupons. Give me a sec. Let's get my coupon. You got any coupons? How many do we go per box? Just as many as we can fit?
Well, 4 because otherwise we start crushing the pizza.
Yeah, good call.
We can put some garlic breads on the side though.
Yep. All right, she's on. The blue nearly matches, Don.
Yeah.
The Gemini I used to deliver in was a wagon, but in this little coupe, I am quickly running out of space.
This can go in the front seat, and you might have to just make other arrangements.
Okay.
Sorry, Don. See you, mate.
Pizza takes priority.
See you there.
Okay.
I'll send you the address. Thanks, guys. I'm back on my old pizza route, except back in the day, I had 35 kilowatts. Now I have slightly more. Let me just say this Gemini is quite a bit more epic than what I used to have. But the feeling is the same. Driving your car around, making some money, bringing people some hot pizza. I wish I had the turbo noises back then, let me just say. Alright, clock's ticking. Can't bring the boys cold pizza.
How'd you go getting here?
Seriously, guys. Seriously. I wish I was with this.
All right, let's go deliver some pizza.
Right.
You fellas hungry? There you go, boys. Lunch is on us today. You don't have a pizza down there. Come grab a pizza. All yours. How you going, boys? How you going, boys? You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping everyone's cars running. We've got heaps more where that came.
Do more? Do we want to grab that one off the seat, or you want to keep that one there?
Oh. You can come with me this time.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. There you go. Like a pizza?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Enjoy. He was hungry too. Look at that. It's nice to just brighten everyone's day a little bit, isn't it? Yeah. As promised, here's your pizza, mate. And what's happening with all those little Hyundais that you got in there?
Charity event for Little Wings.
Yep.
For sick kids.
Yep. And you look after all the cars for them?
21 cars.
21 different cars. And they race and raise money for charity?
At the end of this month, they are.
Just for that, you get extras. Good on you, Lachlan. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, nice meeting you,
Have a good
Lachlan.
day.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
See you later.
See you later. Yeah, nice to meet you as well.
That is a whole boot of pizzas successfully delivered to some hungry mechanics.
Okay.
One of whom is raising money for charity.
Yeah.
Which I love that.
Good on him.
Good on you guys. See you later. He's got 21 Hyundai he sells, little race cars.
Wow.
And they do a race series down at Marulin. And yeah, it's all the money goes to charity.
That was one of the most fun pizza delivery runs I've ever done. The Gemini performed flawlessly and everyone got a feed thanks to Don. Not bad.
That was a success.
Huge success. Look at those smiles on those faces.
Yep. Happy people having their lunch or smoko, depending what you want to call it. I just hope that there's one left for me. That looks great.
Yeah.
Help delivers hope. What's this?
Yeah, so the Domino's charity is what we call Mind and Meals, and we work with Headspace in Australia.
Yep.
You know, obviously mental health is a big issue, especially in the days of social media, and also Minds and Meals. When there's crisis, unfortunately Australia's full of crises, right? There's always things going on with cyclones and fires and whatever, and so we're making sure that we're just feeding everybody.
Oh, great.
As we go, or for Minds for youth, and yeah, so you can round up at the end of any of your orders.
I always do.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it makes a huge difference. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Plus, then we raise funds in many other different ways, including a special Give for Good Day. But yeah, it's been amazing.
We're last on the delivery route, and this is still warm.
How good's that?
Cheers. I'm going to cheers you a pizza box.
Okay.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for being a good sport, and thank you for coming with the pizzas. And yeah, thanks for helping with our build.
Absolute pleasure, and congratulations.
Years ago, we dragged this out of a bamboo forest in Japan. It barely ran, and I knew then there was a lot of work ahead of me. It has since been the biggest and most complicated build I've ever done. It's taken years of work, favours from just about every mate I have, and a lot of patience. Now, it's everything I could have hoped for and more. If I could show this to my 17-year-old self, I'd say keep learning, keep making mistakes, and keep the fire burning for working on cars. Because through a bunch of twists and turns along the road, this is on the horizon.
Time to take the Gemini for a skid on the wet skid pan. Because why not? Yeah, yeah. Yes. Oh, it's doing it. It's not easy, but it's doing it. I'm doing everything to hold myself in, but it's actually going around really nicely. Really nicely. I absolutely need some better seats. Yes! This is great fun. See if we can go left. Much, much, much harder to go left for some reason. Hey! Oh. Yes. How good. The Gemini skids, people. Oh, new seats are absolute must. I cannot even hold myself in. Yes. That's so good. Oh, I'm broken, but it was very fun. How good. Well, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? A lot of fun, and actually like turns. I don't know if it's like a Gemini diff thing. It absolutely has an open diff in it. With a lock diff or a proper LSD, I'm sure that would be even more skatey, but heaps of fun. I mean, I kind of knew Geminis were good at doing donuts, don't ask me how, but that kind of just confirmed it. It actually confirmed that the seats, useless, they're absolutely going in the bin. And I'm gonna put something new, modern, comfy, and that holds you in so I can do better skids. Not actually. These seats look absolutely excellent. They're period correct. One of the main reasons I got this car was because the interior was so nice. Now the rest of the interior is nice, but the seats are no good. Probably fine for a stock Gemini with 50 kilowatts at the wheels. When you've got 4 times that, you actually need something that holds you in. And this car handles really, really well thanks to all the work we did with the suspension. So I am going to upgrade the seats. I've got some seats I've had aside for well over a year that as soon as I saw them, I thought good, current model, really nice, supportive, from a coupe as well. So that's what I'm going to throw in. They are from a current model 86, Toyota 86. They just have like black and grey, which I think will suit really well and will hold me in better. I realise I'm ruining some purity here, but the driving experience is going to be so much better because with this seat, no good. As pretty as they are, and yes, we might look at retrimming later, got to go. So lucky I have a talented friend here and a talented seat. This is a brand new 86 seat, so we're going to attempt to fit that into there. So time to make some brackets, maybe 3D scan some stuff. We'll see how advanced we've got to go. It might be really simple, it might not. So there it is, same kind of theme, not vinyl, they are cloth. A little bit dusty from being stored, but otherwise brand new and never been used. So that, and should fit. They look like they're narrow enough. So let's see what happens.
We're going to make rail adapters, and that means this seat install is reversible. Pulling the carpet and making new seat mounts welded to the car is option 2, which can result in a better fit, but then you're committed to Toyota parts forever. The spray helps the 3D scanner see the contours of the floor of the car, meaning we'll be able to then scan the seat and position them in CAD to see if it will even fit at all, and then create adapters out of folded welded steel.
How far further back do you reckon it is from there to there?
38, see? 38 on the
yeah, but that's,
one.
I'm trying to measure from this hole here to this hole here.
You don't get to do that.
No. Well, let me
just look at my diagram. Look, this is like the past and this is the future.
Yeah. They're both CAD. You know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cardboard aided, computer aided.
Yeah. Both work just exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Miles has superimposed the seat on the top, and then we can actually see where all the like different bits and pieces go. So if you, there you go, there's our bracket. So if you take away the seat, Miles, can we see the bracket?
Yeah.
So there's a very basic image. You can see that we got our original holes there and the new holes there. And so the front will just make little triangulated brackets as well.
So the good thing with this, we can X-ray the seat, so we can change the opacity of the seat so that it will, you can essentially see through it. So we can line it up to exactly where we want it to be, and then just make it 50% opacity, and just being able to like X-ray view it. And this way, if we had it where we were going to originally put it, it would have hit the trans tunnel at the front. So now we can just switch it around to move it to, so like up here.
I know it's like very techie, but it does save so much heartache of having to make 6 different iterations, right?
Yeah. So now we just...
So we can probably do is if you take that seat away again, we can make a version of this just to like test fit, just manually make one with your measurements, and then if it works, then do a like nice laser cut one or something.
Yeah, something like that. Just turn off that seat. Do that. And then you just go seat on, seat off, seat on, seat off.
3, 2, 1, we're back. Look at this. What was a dream is now a reality, and we have some prototype seat adapter mounts. We've also been consulting with our engineer friend about how it sits and where it sits, and to make sure that they're satisfied, because they have to check this stuff off, and basically it's got to have enough bends, enough strength in it, be a certain size, make sure it actually connects through to the floor of the car so all the force is in the right position. But what we also need to do is make sure the seat actually fits. So we're going to consider this version 1. We're going to test it out with a seat and see what happens. How'd you go with it?
Yeah, it's fine. We don't have the greatest of metalworking fab stuff in my shop, but enough to knock out a prototype.
Enough to draw it, plasma cutter it, and then
fold it, weld it up.
It's pretty cool, man.
It's enough.
That's very cool.
Enough. But yeah, no, it looks fine. There is a left and a right, although I didn't label them left and a right, so we're going to have a bit of an adventure.
So the idea is we use some high tensile bolts. These are 8.8 bolts to go through into the factory mounts to mount this on. And same again, high tensile everywhere, generally when you're doing seats is the idea. Yep. So we're going to now test fit it and cross our fingers that it works. Right, so good news, the front fits really well and it fits at a really nice height. Often when you put seats like this in, they do sit higher. Luckily, BRZ86 is a low slung sports car, therefore we've only got about this much extra height, which I prefer anyway. I like to sit upwards a bit more, gives me more room for my legs. The front's really good. The back we have to work out if we've got this backwards left to right, and if not, then our hole's out by maybe 3 or 4 mil. That's why this is a prototype. We didn't go to all the effort to make this straight up. So I'm gonna rip the seat out, check this again and see if it's gonna work. Fits perfectly. Like millimetre perfectly. If that's not the best like demonstration of how we're in the future, scan, CAD, use your brain, bang. Freaking awesome. And not far off like what you could consider a production item. Like you strengthen that up, you make sure it's all good, you know, it ticks off all the safety boxes and you're onto an absolute winner there. That is so cool. Gonna keep going. We actually need to just trim a bit of the plastic on here because it fouls back there. And then that seat, just about good to go. The other side feels fine. The other side's got room. This side just needs a bit of a trim. So that's next.
The new seats are in and they look great, so the only thing left to do is go for a drive.
Feels good, huh?
Feels great.
Who'd have thought it was such an old car when it's just so linear and just ready to party.
Wow. Whoa.
Awesome, eh? And how it's geared, it's like really good for this sort of driving.
Yes.
Like 40, 50, 60 Ks an hour, you know, up to the highway, it's great. It's just like, feels really responsive and really tight.
It feels very responsive. I'm all for the small turbos at the moment, man.
Yep.
Like I know they might not break the internet, but they definitely are like a funner kind of experience on a small capacity engine. I just think it's great.
Completely agree. And also about sizing it right for what you want to do with it. Like this will spool up and party, or right now we can drive off boost and just cruise.
Yeah.
And these are small cars. They were never expensive cars. But what they did really well is they weigh less than a ton and they handle pretty well for their age and their era. Yeah. And it all feels like tight and new and like, but now if you wanted, the power's there.
Yes.
Like it's just really nice. And one of my favorite mods, I mean, there's heaps, there's too many to list, but the seating position now for me game changer.
Feels great.
Absolute game changer. Like comfortable, supported, held in. On the skid pan, I was like falling out of the window.
Yeah.
And you know, it's need purity seats. It has to be vinyl. No. These are great.
So what's your biggest takeaway from this whole build? I mean, you over 20 years ago with one of these cars compared to now, you've done it. What's the takeaway?
There's just everything has come so far. The technology is so good. We're in this sweet spot where like these cars still exist. You can still get them. And then you can apply all the sort of stuff that we did. You know, we can have power distribution modules and built engines and really just like do everything. And this is exactly what this is. This is a build where I've done everything I possibly can to make it as good as I possibly can. And the result is just like, it's just so fun.
Yes.
It's so fun. It's like, it's light, it's easy to throw around, it starts reliably. It's like a modern car in that way, but it has the old school look. And people really do look at it because you just don't see this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you? You don't see 240Zs on these cruising around.
No. But you've done a great job, man.
Thank you.
Like, well done. And a big shout out to Domino's because they really did come to the party all those months ago when I'm like, hey, Domino's, do you want to help us do it? And they actually emailed and said, yep, and helped us pay for everything.
Yeah.
So big ups. Thank you very much for that.
The amount of time and money and parts and effort that it takes is astronomically higher than just, you know, changing an exhaust or something. I'm not to say that that isn't like a really fun way to modify a car. This is the other extreme. This is not a show car, this isn't a concourse car, this isn't some crazy hot rod, but it's still magnitudes more work to do and very, very rewarding now.
Yeah.
Because from now on, this car, like, you know, you hit pause on where this car is now, it's like, it's great.
Yes.
It's really, really cool, man, and very capable. Like, is it supercar fast? No, doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Just old school cool.
But is it faster than a 240Z, Martin? That's probably what we need to find out, right?
I definitely have a weight advantage. Power, I don't know. But all I can say is like, it's the right era of car.
Yeah.
They're in both 70s cars and I think it would be very, very interesting to find out over a range of challenges potentially.
Well, I think we're going to find out and you are going to find out too. Thank you very much for watching this epic series of Mighty Car Mods. If you do want to support the show, please go to mightycarmods.com and grab some merch. We'll ship it to you anywhere in the world.
Great new stuff on there.
Thank you very much to Domino's for getting behind us.
Thank you.
And now, Martin, we're on to some other builds.
Absolutely.
Back to some things that we both love.
Yep.
And so stay tuned. There's some big stuff coming and see you next time. Bye.